All right, and we're live. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share. Looks like there's already one person. Nice. I am going to share sweet and hello. There's one person. Okay, I'm going to share this live on YouTube, and then I'm going to go on Facebook. Okay. Just make sure. Okay. All right. Okay. Hello. Sorry. I'm going to be talking about intellectual property today with Jack, but I'm going to post to Instagram first, which I just did. And then I need to also post to Twitter this video. Okay. Hello. Happy Friday. And I also want to give an update on the campaign. So if any of you are here and hung out, first, hello. Okay. Let me post that. That's good. Okay, that's that. Right. Okay, I need to post on Twitter. That is okay. Oh, I'm almost done. Done. Okay, wait, not yet. Okay, done. Okay, now I have to start Facebook. Okay, isn't technology amazing? I get to enjoy capitalism every day, and I'm really thankful for that. Happy Friday, everybody. And I wonder what you guys are doing. End of the work week for most. Okay, I'm gonna start. All right, starting Facebook. Okay, maybe I should have uploaded it. Oh, well. Hello, Facebook. All right. So, hello. The Facebook video is long. Okay, perfect. Oh, got a heart reaction on Facebook. YouTube did that, Wish you could do heart reactions like you can on Facebook. Because like Facebook, they put like a bunch of hearts or likes. Yeah. Aside from the political stuff, Facebook does provide a good service in some ways. But yeah. Thanks. Someone said cool shirt. Thank you. Where's the pho? I wish I had some. I don't know, but it should be here. It's pretty late my time, so there's not really any places open for pho. So, yeah, lots going on. Finally starting the campaign, so that's cool. Jack will be able to say more. So I'm gonna drink water because I'm pretty tired. And yeah. Hello. Gosh, it has been quite a week. The last 2 months have been really fun doing all those live streams and the comic promotion. As you guys can tell, we took a little bit of a break over here, and this is the third Phorensics. But it's been a while. I think it's been like a few weeks or so. Things have just been busy, and yeah, just been fun, doing a lot of projects. A lot of fun things are coming up, so I'm excited to do those. Somebody said you guys need a podcast with July. I agree. That would be fun. I want a podcast with Michael Malice, and it was really fun to podcast with Tom Woods. That was cool. Quite a fun experience. Although it was like, I noticed it was very quick. I think Tom Woods is the one who has been the most punctual in interviews. And maybe it makes sense. I mean, he's one of the most successful that have interviewed me, so maybe that says something. Yo, yes, and Dave Smith, yes. I saw a live stream where Michael Malice just dropped into a Dave Smith with Fire the Bernstein, his co-host. He just jumped in because they're both in New York and their studios are nearby. It's so cool. I've actually never been to New York, so that would be fun. That's funny. Also, someone said, "You're alive." Yes, I am alive for now. Yeah. Do you guys know that term boogaloo? Like, have you come across that term? You know? Hi. Hello. It's like, am I allowed to say people's names? It's like I'm asking loud. Stop from Brazil. Hello. Wow, people from Brazil. That's so awesome. So many people. I wonder where everyone's from. Probably a lot of Americans, my fellow Americans, but a lot of Brazilians. Electric boogaloo, yes. It's a type of dance, boogaloo. Oh, really? That's interesting. I didn't know that. I just heard the term recently as like a sort of like, term for when it's time to defend our property against the state. Like an all-out boogaloo where you got to get your friends and your family to hold out. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh. California. Oh my gosh. California. Can you imagine? California has such a diverse amount of people in California. And there's a lot of status, obviously. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I wonder what would happen there, Probably be crazy. Oh, Texas. Oh, sad face. Yeah. Arizona, North Cal. Oh, awesome. Arizona. How about those gun rights, eh? That's awesome. Are you enjoying those? Texas, another one. These are like the last stands of liberty. Even though, there's statism everywhere, yes. But there is a compared to what, and there's a compared among states, and in Arizona and Texas, there's a lot less, I would say, socialism, and just more of a culture of like it's okay to have self-defense and free enterprise and just respect your property. Like overall, Florida, another one. Yeah, things are starting to get super polarized in these states. So, which I think is a good thing. And Apple said the same. I think it's great. In a way, it's like competition amongst state governments. The more freedom you have to travel amongst the different states within the U.S., like it creates the incentive to attract, you like from governments, even though they're still coercing you. But nonetheless, if things can be more polarized, like I think it'll be better. Yeah, but hopefully polarized in the right way for like the states that actually respect the Second Amendment and people's right to defend themselves. Hopefully we can push them to just be more libertarian and principled. So that's the goal, right? Just trying to change people's minds. Anyone involved in the LP near around them, or just go to any liberty meetups or anything like that, just like socializing with fellow local libertarians? I'm curious. Southern Colorado, that's awesome. Philadelphia, that's so cool. Someone said you're awesome person. You're an awesome person, okay? Have any of you? I know I changed the topic, but it made me think of it. It made me think of Keanu Reeves at E3. Somebody like yelled at him, and he was like, someone from the audience, like, "You're beautiful," and then Keanu Reeves was like, "You're beautiful," and then it started all this meme trends again of like Keanu Reeves means such a nice person. So He's really into guns, which I thought was cool. I saw him training Halle Berry. I was like, what? I think it was Halle Berry. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was her because she had short hair. But yeah. Huh. Yeah. It's like we need everyone's help everywhere because it's crazy out there, man. But yeah, California's nuts. But you have a lot of entrenched powers in California, very powerful people. I mean, celebrities, Hollywood. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Now we can start Phorensics with Jack and Pho.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to share some stuff, but it wasn't working too well. The internet was, for some reason, extra slow. No, I don't think it's the internet.
It could be the streaming.
Something, yes. Well. Yeah. No, in the past, you've done it. No problem. It's just something's up. I don't know.
It was very rainy today and thundering. Could be.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Anyway.
Unless it's like huge electric fields interrupting the Wi-Fi.
I talked about quite a bit. Wow, it's been 11 minutes. I shared a Twitter,
that's pretty long.
Instagram, and now we're on Facebook. And we're just hanging out. I asked people where they're from, and there's people from Brazil, South Colorado, not Carolina.
South Colorado.
Yeah, South Colorado.
I'm from South Colorado.
Yeah. Is there a thing like Southern Colorado? Well, I'm from the South Colorado. Like, I don't know if there's a culture. I've never been. I've never been to Colorado. Never been to New York. People from California, Texas, Arizona. It's really cool.
So what's new? What's happening? Where are we at?
Someone said abolish the state. I agree. Well, we haven't talked about intellectual property because I thought I'd save that. I also haven't given any updates on the campaign because I thought I'd save that.
Perfect.
So we can go and talk about the campaign.
That's true. Yeah, we could definitely talk about it. Yeah, so
because it ended like a month ago.
I know, right? We were like doing lots of live streams for the campaign.
Someone said you're alive because it's been a while.
Yeah. No, and then it took forever. Indiegogo, I mean, they dragged their feet. I have no idea what happened or why, but I mean, in the past, most campaigns, money came through within 2 weeks. The last one, it was 9 days, literally 9 days.
We had a bit of a scare,
yeah, I was like, oh crap, are they gonna
wondering if
come after come after the comic next with all the censorship, online with YouTube and Facebook? I'm like, oh great, am I next? Because I've been really careful to try to really be proactive and make sure that what I'm doing, I'm not like watering down any principles or anything. I'm just making sure how I present things is in a way that it's not going to get algorithmically stricken. Racist. Yeah, well, that helps too. Yeah, not. I just
quietly said that word because I realized mid-word that is that a red flag?
Yeah, great. Now you said that word. There goes. Yeah, but no. Fortunately, I think Indiegogo got backlogged with a bunch of stuff, and so they just hadn't gotten to it yet. Yeah, which is they
silly. Have a trust and safety team. I thought
they do. Right? Yeah. Now everybody's calling it trust and safety. YouTube now is trust and safety team. It's like,
it bothers me.
It's very scary.
That word triggers me.
Yeah,
it's cringe. Oh my gosh!
But on the bright side, it's through. It's in, and the contract's in. We're going. So now the comic's on to production. So that's really exciting. So that was that was. Yes, thanks to everybody who's here for that. But that was that was like really annoying.
Cheers to that. My water, your sake.
Yes, cheers to that.
What are you drinking tonight? Are you allowed to show it?
Yeah, of course. The usual.
The huge. Wait, isn't that a new? Oh no, that's the original.
No, that's the usual big old sake
that you like to heat up.
Yeah, but I'm gonna not heat it up tonight. I'm just gonna keep it straight.
Yeah.
So that was really annoying to have to deal with, but fortunately everything was good. So, and obviously, I don't think they'd go and create more problems for themselves with a bunch of backlash from angry backers and creators and stuff. So yeah. So on that note, we were talking a lot about intellectual property stuff.
Good update. Made some memes the update of the campaign.
Yeah, it's the campaign update.
Pretty much things are rolling, and I'm excited. Oh, we did a shoot. I actually did this shoot. Well, another shoot.
Right.
Done a couple shoots, so there's going to be a lot of different varieties of scenes with these philosopher hero cards that are coming in.
Right. Yeah, we did another shoot. For the cosplay work. So yeah, not to give any spoilers away because I'm not gonna give you spoilers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
But let's just say it was a lot of fun, and there's some interesting character dynamic within it.
So if you got Philosopher cosplay cards,
it'll eventually come out. There'll be some poses, but it'll be a while, so it's under wraps until then. But
someone said, "Give me a glass."
I don't think we could literally do that, but it's a good thing, right? That you know, glasses aren't just all out, you know, patented copy. Right, all that good stuff, all that intellectual property. Imagine if you every time you used a glass, you had to like pay the original person who made a glass. Like, I made a glass, and if you make a glass, you owe me money forever.
Like you invented the fork, and now anyone who makes a fork is like,
you owe me a royalty every time you use a fork.
You invented, or you filed that you invented it first.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
which you're right ties into, you know, because obviously with voluntarists and things like that, that's an example, real world example of not relying on intellectual property law. And intellectual property is a concept to, as a creator, do and create. Like, it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting there saying, oh, I need the government to enforce monopoly on voluntarist gimmick in order to, like, you know, promote it and raise funds and create it. It's like, no, I just do it. And I am able to do it because I use the, you know, crowdsource funding method. And lots of creators do that, and they use, you know, many platforms. Unfortunately, you know, Patreon has been annoying with some of their censorship and stuff like that. But in terms of the, you know, functionality, it's helped tons of people who are creatives and creators be able to, just give myself space to be able to, you know, get directly connected with fans and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't realize just how much technology and freedom of information is important to people being able to get their creative projects out there in the first place and not have to rely on, you know, centralized channels.
Yeah. Someone gave an example. They're like, I was the first person to say philosopher. I just spelled philosopher with an I wrong on accident, but it's my IP. He just declared it.
You now owe me for life.
And he even has a video of himself saying philosopher before I did, and therefore I should give him some of my money, right? That's the whole logic behind IP. It's just like,
I mean, and
someone just owning a concept, an idea, a process, an idea. Even though if you're not even stealing their property, but you recreate it with materials that you purchase yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's wrong for someone to violate you and take your property just for doing that. You know, like someone invents a lawnmower and like you see a video of it and you're like, okay, wow, I never saw a lawnmower before, right? But now you're introduced to the concept and the possibility of a lawnmower and you're like, okay, you figure out how it works, right? You look on YouTube or whatever. It's like how-to video, or how do you make, what's it called? Like How It's Made. Oh, I love that show. And then it just goes through and like, what if you just did it in your garage and you assembled all the property and all the materials, you go to Lowe's, whatever, you know, it would be horrible if whoever, you know, filed that patent on the lawnmower came to your house and was like, hey, give us like 10% of your earnings because I'm the one who came up with it. And without me coming up with the idea and without, you know, me inventing the lawnmower and you seeing it, you wouldn't be making money right now. And while you could potentially, you know, that's sort of true in the sense that it's just like what happened after, you're still not taking anything from them, and it still is them violating your rights and taking your property because you didn't initiate. So they're not doing it in self-defense. Anyway, that was a long-winded.
I think maybe the wise thing is to just talk about this from philosophy, right? Like philosopher. Maybe we should go back to the beginning of the nature of what is the concept of intellectual property in the first place. Because it's easy to get lost in the rabbit trails of, you know, thinking of the utilitarian outcome-based things, right? Because a lot of people, they first say whenever they hear about, intellectual property.
Just talk about the ethics of it. Like,
right.
If you're not, you know, initiating violence against anyone, you're not taking anyone's property to recreate an idea that you saw and were exposed to, there's nothing wrong with that, and you shouldn't be penalized. And
well, right, but even there, you have to define your terms, because without defining property and ethics on property, you don't really have a philosophical framework from which to then say what is coercion or what is the initiation of force. And so when it comes to, you know, intellectual property, that concept, a lot of people often get caught up in the end, right? They think about, oh, well, how are people going to create to be rewarded for their creations? And what are the incentives then? What are, you know, someone who writes a book for years, or, you know, what about someone who's doing research and development for something? And they're at the wrong end of the spectrum. You know what I mean? That's the same kind of concept. People say, well, who will, pick the cotton without slavery? If you're at the end result and not look at the ethics of inception, you're going to get very lost in all the possible outcomes.
Because what matters is the actions that you're advocating for.
Right.
That's all that matters. It's just like, you could sit here all day and say you want, nobody to starve. But if your idea of how to get there is that you're going to extort, this group of people and give to this group of people and violate their rights, then that needs to be addressed, and that's wrong.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. So even with that, talking about like intellectual property, the concept of that, you have to first walk through what exactly is taking place. How does that arise? And of course, that fully involves the state. It is the state that comes up with the idea of what is considered an idea that can be turned into something that will be, violently enforced by the state. And, obviously it's not just ideas in and of themselves. That's not what makes copyright or patent. In copyright, it's the physical form, putting something into physical form, whether it's writing or a film or, picture or something like that. That is what creates that construct within the statist paradigm. And then so what does the government say? Well, the government says, well, if someone does this, then another person can't, do anything related financially with that. They can't make any derivative works. They can't perform it or display it because that's a derivation work. It's a derivative, and you owe them money, if you do that. And if you think about what that means, it means that someone who maybe comes up with one idea and another person who comes with the idea, separately even, is able to use the state to use violence against that other person, even though, again, what the other person has is just their total wholly owned property. They bought the pencils, they bought the paper separately. They didn't deprive that person of their physical scarce resources. They're doing it independently. And some people will say, well, what about copying and things like that? And it doesn't matter. It's the same thing whether you saw it or came up with it independently. It's still this concept that you're using the government to violently oppress somebody, attack somebody for using their wholly owned private property. Again, you're not taking from the person who created something, their book, their physical book, whatever they made. And so you have to reconcile that aspect of what that means. And for some people, they get caught up again in that whole idea of, oh, well, how are they going to get compensated? Or, how's anybody going to be incentivized to create? And it's kind of silly because you're not thinking about how people will shift in their market decisions based on this new premise and parameters, right? It doesn't mean that people are going to be like, oh, well, there it goes. I guess I'm just never going to hear music again because there's no copyright or patent or anything. I guess there's just no more music and no one's going to have anything that they're going to do with their lives whatsoever ever again. It's just absolutely absurd, and it's completely belied by the reality of people inventing despite massive copying and downloading and stuff like that. So again, you always want to look in that and compared to what's happening currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely.
So
some people think it like excuses fraud by not having IP. Like some people think, okay, well, they say, well, if you don't have IP, that means everyone's just going to copy everybody. It's almost like akin to the argument of like, well, if you don't have the state or a law that says do not kill, everyone's just going to kill everybody, like it's that same mentality of just thinking that words on a piece of paper are what human beings, make decisions based off of, you know what I mean? And not their own will and idea of what's just or okay, so.
Right. And especially as to like, the nature and actions of intellectual property here, you have to really walk through and think about what it is that's being done in the first place in terms of scope, in terms of time, and reconcile that, with the history. And when you look, back at how, again, the copyright patent, the time periods have just constantly been extended based on lobbying from different groups, especially, like Disney, trying to keep extending their Mickey Mouse, copyright and patents forever.
You can't put those same circle ears and have it be black and white on your head. Like that is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. And that they were about to.
So just move the spacing.
Well, they might even consider that derivative, depending. That's what, depending how far
nuts.
It is. It is pretty nuts. But
it's I just want to engineer my own ears, ears.
Right. Yeah.
And people would, by the way, like, I don't think that if you get get rid of IP, that it would necessarily suddenly incentivize people who wouldn't even before suddenly be fraudulent and literally just copy someone else's whole look, idea, name, even images. Like, imagine somebody starts a company and it's like me, okay, right? Me, right? And I'm like, hey guys, I have a company called Google, and I just copy and paste all their brand images. I downloaded it all and I set it up, and it's like, googlepha.com, right? Like, people would see that and there would be its own reaction. Certain individuals might just think that's stupid and just be like, why would I even use your service? I may not even get much traction to really compete meaningfully with Google. So in that scenario, it doesn't even matter to Google. It's not even like, a threat. And yeah, I know it's not like.
Well, I think like in the vein of what you're talking about, right? You have to talk about it from the first part, which is what is fraud, right? So fraud is the material misrepresentation of fact to another to get them to induce it to an action.
There's a difference between fraud and just like
copying and selling. Like if you say, "Oh, I am this entity," or you're pretending to be somebody else, that's different from just simply
like, hey,
selling
I'm Google,
another.
And as Google, I promise you all $1 million. Come to Google headquarters tomorrow, and then 100,000 people show up, right? And they're like, hey, you promised. Like, that would be fraud. That would be like pretending to be Google and making promises as if I was them. But
that would be as relates to the people who the fraudulent person and the people who are being promised to. That is an issue between them and not with Google. It's again a problem as among those particular parties. So again, what happens is, if you look at the history of the erosion of IP, because anyone who's been around long enough and has been old enough to see that change take place with the rise of the internet has observed how what used to be like a very certain thing of making music, and then you get your record label rights and you get your CD rights, like that. They watch all those things wither away with internet culture and people torrenting and sharing and peer-to-peer streaming, and suddenly now you couldn't really control that. A lot of the big players.
I saw the rise and the fall because I saw the rise of the internet. So then you suddenly had that sharing, and then like governments and these big companies, corporations trying to crack down on that and like issue fines. And some people really just got thrown in prison or fined heavily, but they couldn't stop everybody. And so it's just kind of continued, and there's so much out there.
Right. So in the early days, of course, copyright enforcement was much more strict.
Hi, John. Taxation is theft. He's gonna get his girlfriend from the airport. Nice. Drive safe.
So lots of people, in the early days, there's lots of enforcement because it wasn't as popularized yet, and eventually, of course, the government couldn't just pick an easy target like Napster or LimeWire or something like that, or Pirate Bay or something like that. Eventually, it just got so ubiquitous in sharing that there's nothing that the government could even do about it, because everybody, their mom could just download music, movies, share it on a drive, just pass it along. It just became silly. And so with that change in how major artists or producers viewed their content, they had to change in the market how they got their revenue. And you actually saw this with a lot of artists who were very popular, in the early 2000s, like 2010, because instead of rejecting, the copying and sharing movement,
I just want to say thank you for the $1, Elias.
Either Elias or Elias.
Is it Elias?
Elias Cervantes. Thank you. Yes. So you saw lots of people who, embrace that, and what that meant is that instead of being like, we're going to hold our music, we're going to hold our culture pieces, they just put it out there. They put it on MySpace. They put it onto other types of social media, online media,
other things,
right? And then they use that to get themselves popular, because now their music was being shared, and then they became popular online, and then eventually got invited to come out and do live shows, and they do merchandising themselves there, and they do things like a photo opportunity with a signed photo right there and then. So again, the people in the the market, these artists, realize the changes and then adapted accordingly. And even mainstream big artists had to do the same thing. They had to do more live shows, they had to do more special events and things like that. And that's not a bad thing. It's just because you're adapting to the nature of the market, that's not a bad thing to adapt.
What you're adapting to is what people want. And isn't that a beautiful thing? What's wrong with that? Like, I mean, if
outside of ethical, true ethical problems, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly. If someone would rather meet you in person or your fan and they want to like shake your hand or take a picture with you, it's like you should focus on that in a way, because that's what your fans are wanting. That's what they're looking forward to. They're not wanting just to listen to your music and that's it and be distant. Some they'd rather go to a concert and see you live or whatever. Talking about a musician.
Right. Someone said a great author like J.K. Rowling would still succeed. People would, for example, line up to buy the next authentic version of Harry Potter. And
you can just ask anyone that. Like, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. So just to finish that thought there, it's just that example of like the idea of Harry Potter and like the next thing is actually what has already happened with many mainstream entertainment pieces, is that someone builds up a following online. They, write a story online, like One Punch Man. One Punch Man started as some dude he wasn't a great artist, but he made a funny story and it led to an anime being produced. Again, people are adapting and realizing that is a viable means to build a fan base. It's just you put it out there and then you get a fan base because it's just out there. There's no barrier to entry to get it. And eventually people want to meet you. They want to support you directly. They love your work. And you can actually then say, okay, would you like to do this next project that I want? And that's how you get support for the next level. So,
yeah, or even like Patreon. Another incentive was Patreon, direct crowdfunding, and a way to offer different rewards or different connections to you based on support. Like, that arose, and like people are incentivized to go to you. If it was true that you like need IP in order for people to fund you, like then you wouldn't expect people to go to Patreon voluntarily. You would just expect them to just watch and that's it. But there are some people who just want to like get to know you more. And like I myself am like a fan of like Tom Woods. Like I was saying earlier in the beginning, like I would love to go on a podcast with Dave Smith, Michael Vallis. That'd be really fun. And like just like I'm a fan of other people's work as well. And I would pay and purposely try to make sure that my money is going actually to them. I would feel bad if like I bought like a video and the money didn't go at all to Michael, right? Like somebody just like cut it and they like burned the CD themselves and it was like whatever. I'd be like, oh, I actually would rather just fund him directly. So there's an incentive to, if you care about the creator, you see them as a human being, you recognize they want to make a living too from their work, you'll be incentivized as a fan to try and go figure out what channel they're officially on and make sure it's secure or whatever and valid. So
right, and the creators too have an interest in platforming, and so there's a market incentive there as well for platforms to create a kind of proximate, it's not true IP, it's just approximate way to make sure that there's only certain creators, the official authentic creators are the ones who have that channel, and to exclude anyone who is trying to just re-upload the content or even shift money from monetization from one channel to another if someone tries to re-upload the content. So there are market incentives for creators to have that as well. It doesn't involve the state just using violence against anybody, but proximately having an environment to support those people, and build those fan bases. And I think that is something that has not only, been development, but it's more present than ever, especially in a world where, thanks to all these different internet, means of like raising money from GoFundMe to Kickstarter to Indiegogo and things like that. Everybody, is able to outsource to China on Alibaba. And if you do that, boom, they're going to be able to copy it right there and then. But it's about how you provide your customer service, your branding, your outreach, and those kind of things that leads to a successful business, not simply copying, or trying to, make a knockoff or something like that. And so I think that's actually a beautiful thing, because it moves the market from being focused on just, oh, I have an idea and I'm just going to sit there and try to make money using the violence of the state on that idea, to, oh, okay, we need to figure out a way to actually provide customer service and have quality control and have platforming where you might have trusted venues that vet where a product's coming from or vet, a certain, creator or content producer. And I think those things have already been very well developed now than most people are just familiar with it because it's just so prevalent.
Isn't the incentive for providing better customer service a response to the decentralization of the means of production, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely.
Like computers, your own factory, like you can build your own machine now, like different tools, like people can go to Lowe's and literally become their own carpenters and engineers in their own basements. Like it's pretty incredible.
It is incredible. And that's the thing is so many people, if you're
I'd love to buy their products.
Yeah.
If they make it well, like, why should, even if, let's pretend that I invented the telephone, right? Me. And I'll just use myself as an example. But like, let's just say I did, and I made it,
right?
And like I put it together, but I made it like pretty poor construction, and like, screws loose or whatever, or the plastic I used was like not coated properly, whatever, and then somebody else, they quote, copy my idea. But they execute it better. They have customer service. They're like, hey, we guarantee that if there's a problem, we'll 100% refund you, right? And I'm not willing to do that, even though I'm the original inventor. It would be wrong for me to stop someone from buying that person who copied my ideas, my telephone, and keep those people from transacting. It just means I failed. Sure, I had the idea, but I failed to execute it. So,
right.
So again, it's always just about the actual property rights here and manifest reality, like,
right.
What property do you actually have? And you mentioned publishers or like platforms and IP within those platforms. It's not really IP because it's just within their servers, within their website, their app, that they pay to maintain and are responsible for maintaining and ensuring the security of, right? So like those are the rules on their own property. Although it's like, digital, it still ties back down to property when you look at who's building the website, who's maintaining it, whatever.
Right. So. Exactly. Yeah. So, and on that note, I don't
believe in regulating, Facebook or Google or any of those companies. And, if they want to go ahead and say this is the rules of their platform, well, as long as they don't keep other people from building their own platforms and competing, which is the problem, just barriers to entry to competing against these big corporations. That's really the problem. So.
Right. Well, I mean, and I want to address two things. One is you talked about, Google and other platforms and their rules, which again, of course, yes, in a free market, obviously they should have whatever rules they wish to install or instill. The main issue, of course, is severable from that. And that's just to the extent the government is, working with them in cahoots to give them a special license or monopoly to the exclusion of others. And that would be, of course, a problem in and of itself. But of course, anybody would be able to make their own rules. And of course, within those, frameworks, whatever it is, set who is allowed to publish or not publish and so on and so forth. And you mentioned, that was funny, you mentioned the telephone, because that's actually one of those stories where I just was refreshing my mind on the name. It was Elisha Gray and Alexander Bell. And there was this controversy over who brought in the telephone first. Did Bell copy off of Elisha Gray? Yeah. So it's like one of those interesting issues where
Isn't
it's
that the one where they were like just a block away from each other?
I don't think they were a block away from each other, but Bell may have seen some of his work, or basically, one may have just beat the other to the patent office just by a little bit, basically. And so because again, the patent office is first come, first serve. You get, first to there, first to have it. So it's kind of crazy that it's just, even though he made it separately, okay, now the government is going to enforce violence on another person who invented it independently. It's kind of wild.
That doesn't even happen in actual property rights. Like you get property either by you've just obtained this unclaimed resource or thing, material, or someone gives up their property to you voluntarily, in a trade. You don't like, it's just so weird. You don't like go to the government and say, like, I want to get this car. Can you just approve it? Like, I don't know. It just seems like it's totally outside of what actual property rights are and like how people obtain property now.
Are you saying like intellectual property is outside of those concepts you're saying, the base?
Oh, no. Well, yeah, like in the act of trying to say that you have this intellectual property, like you're saying, going to the patent office and saying, this is my invention, this idea is mine. Like, with any other property, you don't go to the state and just ask for permission to like make a trade or whatever. I
mean, you do.
You make it with that
permission. Like you sell a car, sometimes you use a title for the government. You sell a house, that's a property appraised. You get that filed with the government whenever you buy or sell property. So
that's
but
interfering again. But,
yeah, of course. Okay, but tying it, let's tie it a little bit more concretely, because I think something that we can like really draw out of this, like to connect to like the concept of IP, is that, again, what's the real issue, right? The real issue here is that intellectual property fundamentally is the idea. And I think Stephen Kinsella says this very well. He's a patent attorney, who's a scholar at Mises. He says this pretty well. He encapsulates it pretty well when he says IP effectively is just saying someone else can control your private property, right? They can decide that it's your property in the first place, it's your materials, but they can decide what you can do with that, even though it's wholly on your own property. When you put it that way, it suddenly becomes very clear that this is an unethical concept. The idea that someone thousands of miles away can use the violence of the state, tell you can't make what they made thousands of miles away with your own wholly owned property. And that's what it boils down to. And so, and when you start to abstract this a little bit more, it becomes even crazier, because you're like, oh, okay, yeah, smaller governments enforcing IP within one government. We have the U.S. government. But what happens when you have someone in China do the same thing as someone in the U.S., or they copy it, and they're 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 miles apart, whatever.
Who really owns
right?
The
so
idea.
They get to use violence against this person thousands of miles away on their own wholly, privately owned property. Is it my brother
Ching in China, or is it you?
Right. It's really wild when you start to actually take a look at what you're assuming there. And the reality is that the freedom of information is actually the most beneficial thing to the market in terms of people's productivity and innovation. And this is not something that's just theoretical. This is very real in China, where people tend to get away a lot more with doing a lot of knockoff stuff. And what happens in China in their electronics markets, especially in some of their chief cities where they're doing this kind of manufacturing stuff, is they're constantly copying off each other and seeing what each other's doing and ripping off. But they're still innovating, because they're still looking for the next cutting edge thing and adapting to whatever new inventions or new better ways of doing things comes up. And it's not a bad thing, because by everybody constantly learning from each other, they're constantly evolving. And then the business end is focused more so on customer service aspect. They're focused way more on, okay, branding. How do we reach out to people? How do we sell them on this? How do we provide, value in terms of telling, getting people to really understand that they're going to have quality control and they're going to make sure everything's good, start to finish. And you start to like lose a lot of the sense of this, like, oh, no one's going to innovate anymore. That's it. Like, no more music, no more, medicine. And they're like, yeah, pharmaceutical drugs, no one's going to like spend all that money. It's like, do you not realize that people have an incentive?
You're just incentivizing being creative and competing and like making sure you're trying to meet market demands.
Right.
That's what it incentivizes.
Right. It's at that point, people, again, it's just a shift of psychology. And instead, people then focus on, if they want to, develop a, life-saving drug, right? People don't just say, oh, my wife has cancer. I just don't even care if, there's nothing, that can help her. People who have resources wish to, invest in or, give money or support different organizations that are doing research toward helping, cure different things. Yeah. Because they have a personal incentive. Like, if you have pain, you're like, man, I don't like to be in pain. I would like to support an organization that is developing research for this. Or if
your parent had breast cancer, you're like, I really want to support initiatives to fight breast cancer or Alzheimer's. You see that all the time.
It happens all the time.
My dad had Alzheimer's. My mom had whatever.
They do fundraisers, Race to the Cure, all this other stuff. It's just absolutely absurd because people have a selfish interest to want to be whole, to want to be
and not die
out of pain and not die. And it's the only means, people say the only means is if, there's Merck makes it. It's like, no, if anything, Merck is one of the big manufacturers of drugs out there. So like so people have this mindset, but it's like, no, first off, let's look through a couple of things. We need to disabuse, ourselves of. First off, when it comes to these big drug manufacturing companies, right, they are holding other inventions. They're not just simply making stuff. And a lot of people need to understand this. They also have patents and things that they're keeping other people from even using in the first place. Alternative medicines, right? And you look at the war on drugs and you look at what happened there and the possible cures and things that people can help with certain types of either, you could call it psychoactive or other types of, mentally stimulating drugs.
All the states that like suddenly switched to medical and recreational. I'm sorry, I inserted here this example.
All right, tell me.
I'm just gonna insert an example here.
Yeah.
Like when they semi-freed the market on marijuana, like suddenly you had like, okay, cookies, tinctures, all these different kind of things. Oh, right. Here's labels for, hey, do you have this sort of ailment? Like people reported it helps with this, leafly.com arose, like, and it all like burst onto the scene suddenly when you, don't make it a crime to just innovate with marijuana.
Right. And so, in that vein too, right? Like we're talking about natural medicines and other things and early types of, medicines that are not just keeping you addicted to the medicine, right? It's not just curing symptoms. When you're talking about historical medicines like aspirin, stuff like that have come into public domain, right? Because it was invented 100+ years ago. Is there no aspirin anywhere because, it went into public domain? No, people still, that is manufacturers still make those drugs that went into public domain, right? That were invented long enough ago that, there's no more copyright patent issues, related to that. So again, it's not like, I guess there's no more pain relievers out there because there's public domain. But no, of course not. There's still companies that say, get our version of this. We have good quality control. We make a good product with that, right?
And they're like, here's where exactly we, get the chemicals from or whatever. Like,
right.
They show you a video of their factory. I don't know.
Well, it's true. I mean, that's the thing is when you move away from just, it's just pure idea, patent control and stuff like that. Again, people don't just twiddle their thumbs and just say, I guess that's it. No more music, no more movies, no more. Yeah. No, people respond accordingly. And they have, as has already been demonstrated with anything that's gone into public domain and any instances where IP has been eroded because of technology and they just can't stop it with music, movies, so forth. People have, companies have adapted. Like Adobe went from, so many people are pirating their software. Adobe went from being a buy one-time disc to let's do a subscription model online. And they increased their customer base and they got more money because instead of saying, just buy the disc once, they said, here, subscribe to our service, just a smaller monthly fee instead of a big upfront fee. And then
you get all the regular updates.
And you get regular updates and extra benefit.
Buying the new version over and
so they were able to collect so much more money by switching from the software model. Let's just go after people pirating.
You lowered the barriers to entry.
Right.
Wow, look at that.
They lowered the barriers to entry and turned it more service oriented in how they provided the Adobe suite.
Right.
And when they did that, they were able to capture more people because more people were like, I can afford $10 a month for Photoshop and I use it enough. I can afford $50 a month to have the full Adobe suite. And they changed their business model to accommodate to the pirating in the market.
Fighting Cap Zombie.
It exists already and it just keeps going. So it's one of those things that you really, if you want to wrap your mind around the concept of intellectual property and the nuances, just do the compared to what already exists in when either something goes in public domain and or when the mechanisms of technology make it very hard, to stop pirating and copying and stuff like that. And you realize, people are just adapting to that and figure out new ways to monetize their creative projects, their, you'd say technological projects and so on and so forth.
Oh, so Angel is like dropping some principles over here. He's like, property comes from scarcity. Ideas aren't scarce.
Right. And like scarcity is definitely a part of that, but it's
like
even
anyone can think it. You're not taking it.
Right.
Anything away from it.
Exactly. And that is a part of like the ethics of peace here. If we want to talk about it in physical peace, again, scarcity is an element, right? It's whether or not you're depriving the person of their physical object, right?
And he also said you can't Let me just read it, actually. You can't steal ideas. You can only steal the book. Like the actual book.
Yeah, the physical book. Right.
It's like, hey, I bought that book. You stole my book.
Right.
But if someone, like, I don't know, heard about the book and they made their own book titled that, whatever. Well, there you go. Somebody said plagiarism just shouldn't exist. I mean, you can think that, but to still initiate violence against another human being for just copying your idea is wrong. So you just, at the end of the day, you can say it shouldn't exist, but it's about how do you disincentivize people. And part of that's culture. People already, it's already a norm that people look down on plagiarism. I don't, like, no reputable institutions is like, oh, we welcome people who all they do is plagiarize other people's work. Like, what? No, like, it's already a cultural norm, but nobody here is like initiating violence, as a result. They're just choosing to disassociate with them, using their property rights to say, okay, well, I'm not going to associate with you, whatever, you're a plagiarist by like whatever, or I'm not going to buy from you because you just copy other people's work. Like if somebody was like, hey, this is my book, Harry Potter, haha, it's about a wizard, but this it's an idea never done before, like who's going to buy your book? And if someone does, good for them, whatever. Most people won't, probably, if they just find it distasteful that you would just copy literally whatever J.K. Rowling made.
Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe people will just rip off of it and accept it because they'd have no way to know. But the bigger, more important part than that, this is, I think, way more important to understand, is that there's a change in market incentives. Again, when you have this new way of, expecting what you can or can't do, because you don't have the violence of the state to back you up, it changes how you're going to launch your creative projects. It changes how you're going to monetize your creative projects. And that's okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's no different than saying, I guess we can't use slave labor anymore. I guess maybe picking cotton's going to have to come through some other means. Well, yeah, because that was not ethical. Just like intellectual property, the concept's not ethical. Mattered. Right.
It wasn't who's gonna pick the cotton, who's gonna, make the clothes. Like we're not gonna have enough clothes. Like,
right.
That's not what matters. It's like the solutions, the possible solutions are endless when you discard coercion as a tool for change. If you just take out coercion from your toolbox, you could say, some fascinating possibilities come up on how you try to change things for the better,
Right.
Like
it's the same thing.
Trying to change people's minds and trying to say, hey, you should have this philosophy that plagiarizing is bad. Here's why. But look what you're doing. You're not initiating violence against anybody. You're just trying to convince them. And at the end of the day, if some group of people, they're like, oh, we plagiarize all day, every day. As long as they are not initiating force against you and you have the freedom to disassociate with them, cool, that it doesn't matter then you go about your own lives, right? Like if no one's property rights are being violated, then what does it matter? It's like somebody being gay. Like you might think nobody should be gay, but if they're not initiating violence against you, who cares that they're gay? Just disassociate with them if it bothers you and go about your day. Like if they're not initiating force against anybody.
Right. Yeah. And that's what it boils down to, is that personal preference and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean, but that's really what really cuts to the core is the body count and physical human violence. Again, if you're trying to get to a point of having more peace, you can't be sitting there and saying, oh, okay, well, let's use people with guns from the state to like just, point guns at anyone who's using their own physical property to form that into something that might look like something someone else made. You can interrupt it today.
Sorry, when you just say the whole thing that you just said, we say that for everything. That is our whole thing when it comes to anything that we're against when it comes to government action. Like we're against government action because we're against the initiation of violence.
Right.
For, non-violent actions.
Right.
For victimless actions. So it's just kind of funny. I feel like a crazy person, like, just stop hitting each other and stop taking their stuff.
Well, and on that note of this insanity, this kind of ethical insanity,
every single thing.
There's another element here that I think people don't really, take in and really think about and machinate or mull around their mind. And that is that the nature of what those terms are and those specs are as relates to patent and copyright, anything in IP, is they don't sit there and say, why is patent, 20 years? Why is, copyright 70 years plus whatever? Like, they don't sit there and think, why is it any period whatsoever? There's no logical connection to the time period as to why you have that right to use the state's force for that certain period of time, right? It's just totally wanton. There's no specific, there's limit.
So it expires and then you have to file again and pay?
No, it's complicated, so I'm not going to get into the details, but it depends on the field for the time and renewals. Yeah. But more importantly, when you take that in, it becomes like, wait a second, why is it 21 years or 25 years? And then there's another layer that I think a lot of people don't know, because most people are not lawyers, but fortunately I am, and I can help you understand this topic a little bit better. So, right. Yeah. So here's something else that a lot of people don't know about.
New segment.
So so there's something else very important that a lot of people don't know about that you really should look up and study. You really should look this up. 35 USC 181. Okay, 35 USC 181. Look this up. I'm not making this up. This is real stuff. Okay, the government literally has the patent office. This is the real reason. The patent office is a screening agency. It is not meant to we're gonna help protect inventors. No, it's actually meant to be a screening agency so that the government can go and take private inventions and gag the inventor, so that if there's something that those in state power think will advance humanity too fast from what they can control, they shut it down. And a lot of people don't know about this because nobody's going to cover it in public school. They're not covering it in your college classes, by and large. Nobody's going to hear about this. Even if you go to law school, which I did, you probably still won't hear about this unless you really look into it and do some research. And when I did, I was just flabbergasted. I was shocked. And I researched a lot of the case law and things related to this, and I discovered that under the national security doctrine, the government can just silence and gag the inventor, take the invention out of the registry, hide it, and that's it. And that's how come a lot of people are like, oh, without the government, we wouldn't have, the internet and all this other stuff. Y'all don't even understand that the government's been taking private inventions and using them in the deep state for, I want to say decades, just to be, but I mean, literally, a very long time, even, much farther than that, about 100 years. So when you're looking at the nature of the patent office, realize the government's using this to silence innovation in the first place, and then use it for government projects, behind closed doors. Again, this might be like, oh, is this conspiracy theory? No, go look it up. 35 USC 181 right now. Google it. You'll find it and be like, oh, wow, the government can just silence people and take the inventions. And I can tell you from a firsthand experience instance that I, can't delve into the actual details. It's not just for like, oh, someone's making the next big nuclear weapon thing. It can be for just communications technology that literally just advances people. It's not even like, oh, it's a weapon. The government literally takes the inventions using the office, right? And not only that, but wait, there's more. There is more. The government has compulsory licensing, right? So if you don't know this, again, go Google compulsory licensing. The government can force somebody to give a license to other people if they don't want to, right? So you say, oh, this is mine. It's my intellectual property, right? Not to the state. To the state, if they want you to forcibly license your invention to somebody, they can. They can even set the rates at which you license it per product. And the government also does it for itself. In other words, those in state power can say, we want your product. Yeah, and we'll choose what we're going to pay you, kind of like eminent domain, but for patents and copyright. So all these people who are like, well, I really own this and stuff like that. No, you don't. The government will take your stuff anytime they want. They'll gag you, not pay you. And there's case law where that happened. A guy sought $10 million in compensation, didn't get it. The government's like, nope, national security, not even going to look at it. And they can forcibly, compulsory license whatever you invent. So anyone who's sitting there and who's on the fence about this, thinking about the nature of this, don't be tricked by the state.
Someone said, what was that code again?
35 for Facebook, 35 USC 181. Okay, 35 USC 181. You could look it up right now. Literally, the government can gag inventors and take the invention for their own purposes and pay them nothing. Okay, and this has happened over 5,000. I mean, it's probably six.
Happened with the invention of like electric cars?
No, that's a separate topic. I'll talk about that after if you want. So basically, the government has done this now probably near 6,000 times. And you can even Google up Wired Magazine. Wired Magazine did a great write-up about 5,000 plus inventions being taken by the government. You can Google 5,000 inventions have been gagged, Wired Magazine. Do it right now if you want to. If you got an extra window, go look at it. It's real stuff. The government will take those inventions. So this whole idea of like, yeah, patents and copyright, blah, blah, it's a sham. It's a complete sham. It is meant to be a clearinghouse for the government to take people's inventions. And I know that both from studying it, of course, on the law side, I also have seen the case firsthand where that happened. And I also knew somebody who was in the patent office who did the reviews. And it was really weird. For some reason, they were really into Ron Paul, even though they were working for a very serious agency. It was bizarre. But I got to talk to them and verified that they were there. And he told the same thing, that they do the reviews. And if they're doing the reviews, you know, for patents and stuff like that, if they see something that this could be used for something interesting, they send it to the higher ups to see if it gets national security classified. So, wow. I mean, yeah. So this, I mean, when you look at the brass tacks and get out of the theoretical, get to ground level with what's actually happening, you can actually see.
You see the violence.
It's the violence. The government is using this in the first place.
It's just like we do with gun control.
People.
We're trying to point out that people who advocate for gun control and what gun control really is, it's violence. And that's, you know, that's all there is to talk about when it comes to intellectual property or gun control. It's about whether or not it is wrong for you to initiate violence for whatever you're advocating, you know.
Right. And that's what it boils down to.
Like to pay for healthcare. Like,
give me your health.
Healthcare is a human right.
Oh gosh, I don't even want to get into the DNC debates. So.
Well, no, I'm not trying to get into the DNC debates. If Bernie Sanders was he even there?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I didn't even see him. But yeah, he wasn't covered as much.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I don't plan to watch it. I
was just making.
No, thank you.
Like just parodying him because he always says that, but it's just like what he's saying. You know, it's people who aren't actually thinking about what he's actually saying and advocating for would be like, yeah, healthcare is a human right. No one should die, right? Who's gonna disagree? Like, no, I think some people should die. Okay, there are people who would think that some people should die, but you know, in the general sense, they're not going to see it as like immoral for you to say that you don't want anyone to die. But you have to ask them, okay, well, what are you willing to do to get to your ends? And that's when they'll be like, okay, well, I think I should tax you. And what is taxing you? That's just extorting money from you. It's taking your money by force without your consent. So that's when it's like, okay, well, you're advocating for violence. The question is, how do you maximize freedom for all individuals and respect people's property rights and get to the ends that you want? How do you both treat your fellow human beings with respect, as long as they, you know, are treating you with respect, respecting your body and your property as well? How do you do that and make changes in society, advocate for peaceful parenting, whatever your goal is, you know, have more communication technology so that you can have easier trade all around the world with billions of people now, right? Already, even though the state has existed from, you know, kings to feudal lords to, you know, the samurai to the, you know.
My people and the
samurai lords and
there's still feudal lords.
Dynasty.
The Qing dynasty.
Yeah, the Qing dynasty.
Spelled with a Q.
Democracy. I mean, all these things. Like, you know, even though that has existed, people outside the state have voluntarily tried to provide value to others and exchanging goods and services.
Right.
So it's a beautiful thing. And already around us, we see capitalism.
So to take it back to no, you're good. That's good. To take it back to the intellectual property thing, and even the beginning of this, the comic stuff, I actually want to talk about something else that, you know, is very close to home for me. So, and a lot of people don't even realize this. It's mind-boggling, but it ticks me off when I see people not recognizing and making these connections. So I'm gonna make this. Maybe some of y'all will be like, okay, I feel you on this, right? So cosplay is a copyright infringement. Right. Cosplay is a copyright infringement. Even your Halloween, if it's not an officially licensed outfit, that's, you know, whatever, Darth Vader or whatever, it is literally what's considered a derivative work, which means it is technically on the books illegal. Now, fortunately, most people are not directly prosecuted for this.
Yeah, because they just don't have the means to prosecute everybody because everyone does that.
Well, there's a history to this, and I want to just talk about this history really quick. The history to this, it's really fascinating, is that back in the day, DC Comics was a stickler about this, right? They really kind of went after people for even cosplaying, which is crazy if you think about it, right? Today, it's like, what? Like cosplay's everywhere, right? But back in the day, it was new, it was burgeoning. And Marvel, the company, accepted it more. They were like, you know what? Yeah, let people cosplay. We're not going to just sue everybody for making their own stuff. Even if they sell it here and there, whatever, we're not going to make a big deal out of it. Whereas like DC's like, oh, someone's like selling unofficial merch. Boom, we're going after them. Marvel kind of let things slide a little bit more. Because they let it slide more, Marvel had a bigger growing community of fandom in the beginning because they were a little bit more receptive to people, doing cosplay and stuff like that. And as you saw in the post-2000 arena, Marvel ended up kind of winning the mass media war in terms of movies and entertainment, stuff like that, because they embraced that culture more readily of people, coming up and coming up with their own creative works. And it's wild when you think about that. But strictly under the law, you would be, able to be put into prison potentially, or, heavily fined for cosplaying. I mean, when you think about that, that's the nature of copyright law. That's the nature of patent law. And
you didn't steal Disney or whoever you're cosplaying's property.
You didn't steal their physical property. You're a fan. Like you love
trying to recreate it. You're like, oh, I love that style of how they look. I want to look like that, or like whatever. Like you paid for all the materials yourself.
Right.
You hired the artist to like make the file or whatever.
Oh, and here's another thing. Okay, so what grinds my gears? I feel like I'm like Peter Griffin right now.
Maybe we should call this what really grinds
my gears, right? So here's another thing that's crazy, right? This is gonna blow your mind. Anybody here? Yeah, someone said I'm a nerd. Yeah, I'm a nerd. So people go to conventions, right? They go to comic conventions, cosplay, right? They have artist tables, artist alleys, and these artists are sitting there doing custom renditions, their own renditions of Disney characters, Star Wars characters, Harry Potter, different animes, whatever.
They're meeting a market demand. By golly, I love this.
Right. They're doing a great thing. I love that.
I want to see, whatever cartoon in a certain pose.
Yeah.
With this.
I want to see a Sonic Mario love baby picture.
A lot of people like that.
Oh, my sweet Lord.
They like fan pictures.
Yeah. There's some nasty stuff on DeviantArt. But the thing is, those are all technically copyright infringements.
Right.
Because they're derivative works. They're illegal. By the books.
It's just not
okay, so when you're like, oh, cover this. No, your fan art is illegal. It's technically illegal. And many of these artists who are making money doing these like whatever $40, $50, $60 caricatures and like doing custom stuff for people, they're making their bills doing this by doing derivative works from the major players. Yeah. Lucasfilms, now Disney. I mean, I could just say Disney. It covers half of everything. I followed
this one person on DeviantArt that did all the Disney princesses, and it was all purely their art. They did it digitally, and it was beautiful.
It's beautiful, but guess what? It's illegal.
And he sold it for like hundreds of dollars, $200. You can get big portraits of.
Well, Disney doesn't have time to go after every single person, and they got to the point that they didn't have to care too much as long as someone isn't like selling like unofficial merchandise, right? They let those things slide.
If it's expensive. To go after someone? Like
it depends. It depends. Oh. There's costs in the court and stuff like that, and if they decide to fight it. But again, the point here is that people don't even realize that they're accepting copyright infringement all the time, and they embrace it, and they dress up their favorite characters on Halloween. They dress it up to the cons. They get caricatures and this or that. And they don't think twice about the fact that, oh, they're actually rejecting copyright. They are rejecting copyright in that moment. And if you realize that and you realize, oh, okay, now it connects what copyright is in terms of the actual violence and what it stifles.
Jard said he's going to turn himself into philosopher. I mean, look, Jard, do it, please.
Go for it.
I would even promote you. Especially if you were principled and a principled libertarian, you like did your makeup like mine. Like you gave yourself some like chinky eyes. You had like a black wig. Dude, I'd be all up for that. I'd be like, that's funny. Lord. That's entertaining. I mean, if it was, assuming it was, it's like, go for it. Like, who cares? Like, it'd be so stupid if I was like, police, go to that man's store and break down his door.
He's not the real philosopher.
Take his wig.
Take him down.
Take his eyeliner makeup. Take his fake boobies.
Oh my. So yeah. Okay. So on that note of grinding gears, right?
I'm just trying to show you it's violence.
It's just violence. It's just silly. So on the note of grinding gears, so what really grinds my gears as relates to that is when artists are like, copyright, whoever their artist is, like, oh, it's copyright me when they do a rendition of some Disney characters. Like, dude, you're going to sit there and be a stickler about your copyright. And meanwhile, you're profiting off of doing derivative works from freaking Disney or whatever anime you're doing. Like, you profit off of their popularity. Like, some of these artists don't even connect that they themselves are violating copyright law and then trying to be like a stickler about their drawings and that this is my copyright, this is my rendition of Disney character. Like, you're violating their copyright from Disney. Like, do you not get it? Like, your existence and your subsistence is made off of the reputation and the spending and the fandom created by that other company. And I think if more people just fully recognize and embrace that, they'd be more chill about the copyright thing and realize, oh yeah, you know what? That just is not the way to, you know, treat people is this threat of state violence or copyright patent stuff like that. Like, this is insane. It really is insane when you boil it down.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed. So
it's hard to Joel Osteen.
I'm getting a little tired. So let's recap all the various points that we've covered. We covered quite a bit when it comes to IP. We covered there is a difference between copying someone's idea or just sharing the same idea that somebody had in some cases, right? And fraud. So we covered that. There's a difference between that and just straight up fraud. Like, you're just...
Well, we should explain it again. Fraud is a specific action where someone makes a material misrepresentation of fact to another person to get them to act for, you know, type of business transaction. Again, it's like if I said, oh, I'm really in charge of this company.
But there is.
Right. That's fraud. That's fraud. Right. There's a difference between that and just simply copying and selling. And, you know, pretending to be something or someone you're not is a difference, and that's a contractual relationship between the two people who are engaged in that transaction.
Right.
That's different from just simply, you know, copying and making stuff, because again, you're violating their expectation of business and trade, right? Just like if you said, oh, here's a new car and there's no engine. Okay, duh. You expected that this car has the engine, but they lied and said it does, and it doesn't. No different than if you said, oh yeah, I'm really Disney, but you're not, and you're trying to pretend like you can enter a relationship. Again, fraud. Big difference. So yeah. You're saying what else?
What else? Oh, did we define
creativity?
Well, we kind of said property is based on scarcity, just like
the property is
material world.
Well, property is a psychology, right? It's like it's a psychology of human beings. Like, property doesn't exist outside the mind of human beings. The question is why should a certain definition of property be accepted among human beings? Yeah. And we look to the physical actions and, of course, the real world consequences, the violence that can happen if you accept or reject certain principles about that.
Right. Yeah.
True.
Like.
Right.
So the current rules outside the status paradigm is to obtain property, because I said that earlier, like I was trying to say, like, how property now is, how property rights are respected is just you can either take property and claim ownership over property that has been abandoned or never claimed before, like just unclaimed from a state of nature. You take it out like a rock, whatever, it's yours now. I don't know. Or
rock it out.
I'm gonna rock it out. Or the other way is somebody else's property and they give it to you voluntarily, like in a trade, or they gift it to you, whatever. They just give it to you voluntarily. I'm not talking about the state when the state's like, hey, in order for you to get this car or drive it around, you need to get a title or whatever. I bought a car once. I don't know the stupid process, but
you need to title.
I digress.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I see. That's how property is transferred. It's based on like physical matter and yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's what it boils down to again. And well, I mean, and that's what you're just saying though. Like just expanding it more, like because of course,
please do.
That's the great foundation is just this idea that what is the real concern, right? In terms of the physicality, right? What are we worried about in terms of human empathy, human reciprocity? If you intrude on someone's physical stuff, right? You expect that when you go to sleep and you wake up, your car's not going to be gone, right? You expect the food's still going to be in your fridge. You expect that the stuff that you've worked to build and to save and, you know, for your own comfort, protection, and life and sustenance doesn't disappear, right? Mm-hmm. That's the fundamental aspect of property rights and scarcity as relates to there. If someone could literally have, you know, some Star Trek and again, it's
you
not
want to
realistic.
Talk about incentives when you don't have property rights. that's when you don't have the incentive to create. You know?
Right, when you have absolutely no property rights as a psychological concept, yes.
You're just someone's fucking slave. How creative are you going to be? Your whole life is literally you
if someone else is going to take anything you do, well, where's the incentive, right?
Yeah, they take everything you make. Like, what if it was 100% taxation? That, you know, governments realize that you can't have 100% taxation.
Right.
You're just going to have, like, because... Right? What people recognize, okay, if it was 100% taxation, that's slavery. You could probably get any statist to agree with you, right? 100%.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
Taxation would be slavery. But why isn't 98%, 97%, even 50%, 25%, 20%? Like, if you have to give up that money and you have, that is slavery. You have no choice. But because it's like a little bit and you get to keep some, you have some freedom with some property, well, at least you still have some sort of incentive to create, but it's dampened. It's not as high. You know, you have to
there's diminishing
reallocate
value because the more that you take and the more effort you have to put in, but you're getting less, or you know, it's getting taken away.
So we're in this weird world where these governments are like, okay, shit, we're just got to play it in the middle. How do we get that sweet spot where people are like, it would be too much to risk my life to rebel against the state right now. Okay, fine. Here's 50%. Leave me alone for the rest. You know what I mean? Like, we live in this kind of world. So, although some people are trying to push for total socialism, and that's interesting.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's socialism.
Total slavery.
Well, you're saying state socialism, I think, because socialism has many definitions, but
yeah, state socialism.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where, again, just tying this all back together, the intellectual property concept, you know, obviously if you have no property rights whatsoever, because of no respect of your home, your body and stuff like that, it's very hard for you to be motivated to do anything, right? Because you're concerned it's just going to get taken away. With intellectual property, of course, people naturally have those fears because they think, oh, well, if you can't profit off an idea, well, then no one's going to invent. But it's, again, there's a difference between not being not being able to profit whatsoever and having whatever idea you have, you know, just immediately taken, and contract and specific, you know, avenues for promoting and raising funds. Again, there's a difference between, oh, I have what I have taken away by force, and, oh, okay, I got to think about how I present and do the order of operations for financing or for fandom and stuff like that. That's it. It's a big difference. It's always about property rights. Very big difference. Yeah.
It's always about who's pointing the gun and property rights. All right. Did we sum it up? What else? Yeah.
You going. So
I've just been drinking water.
I'm sure. Is that just water?
Who has the sake over there?
I have the
sake. Pulled out this jug of water.
Water.
Purified water.
Pure vodka.
What, you think I unscrewed this and put moonshine in here? You think I'm Zach Wachowski? I can say that because he's not producer.
Here.
Oh, because he's not here.
Because he's not here. Oh, goodness. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just a paradigm shift of thinking. What's that?
Oh, I said, good conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I hope people. I didn't see anybody ask any questions actually like related to just like saying, oh, well, what about this situation with intellectual property thing? But
maybe that
if anybody had a question,
that it's about ethics,
right? If anybody had a question, we'd be happy to answer a specific question as relates to intellectual property or concepts or concerns, like narrowly tailored.
I think we addressed the consequentialism, bent of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not about that. It's not about the ends so much as the means. The means is what matters, and that's what we focus on. The ends will come. It just, as long as you have the means, the ends will come as what they are. And as long as people's rights are respected, I mean, that's great. That's the kind of world I'd rather live in, just a peaceful world. And
oh, that reminds me, maybe one other aspect
too. I don't agree with, but they're not coercing anyone otherwise. I mean, that's the kind of world I want to live in. And the people whose lifestyles I don't agree with, I still want to understand and get to know just because I'm curious. It's a interesting aspect of consciousness that another consciousness just so happen to be that way. If they're not violent to me or anyone else, well, cool. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating.
Another aspect to intellectual property I think is fascinating. And this is something to definitely look into. There's a couple documents on it. So anyone who's, still like just curious and researching the compared to what in the real world. the governments have, U.S. government, a couple of governments have permitted seed patenting, right? So Monsanto in particular did some genetic modifications to seeds. They patented seeds. And in fact, in one case, they even went and got, I forgot the exact term because I'm not an agriculture guy, but it's like the native, like original seeds. I forgot what it's called when it's like the early form, genetic form of a seed where it's like an early ancestor. But Monsanto was able to go to the seed bank and basically patent a bunch of stuff. And then what they did to mess with farmers is they'd have their trucks run across, the open country road. It would blow off seeds from the trucks onto these farmers' crops. And then suddenly the genetically modified plants would grow up. And then Monsanto would call whatever government agency, and say, oh, hey, this farmer is stealing our seeds. And then they would come in, do a raid on their field, and then say, how did you get these Monsanto seeds? And of course, the farmers didn't have it. Monsanto intentionally snuck the seeds onto them and got the farmers who were competitors because they had those master seeds. I just forgot the name. Someone can look it up or type it, what the name of a seed is when it's the first seed or whatever of a genetic type.
Isn't that fraud?
It's not fraud because they're not making a contract with somebody else and you get a material misrepresentation.
What would that be called? You're blowing seeds and then.
Well, so the blowing of seeds, a property rights violation, and then beyond that, of course,
then the initiation of violence.
It's it's a trespass and it's
that's just showing what IP justifies.
Right. It just justifies this kind of crazy stuff where these companies are like, oh, look, they took our seed. See, because we have the right to this seed.
Even if he did, who cares? Like, what if did he steal it from your company? No. Did he go to the grocery store or get the fruit or whatever and got the seed, extracted it and planted it and then sold it? That's fine.
Just evil. Just evil stuff. Yeah. Again, the government, of course, is not the only organization that does evil stuff. They're private actors. Exactly. It's just government's the guarantee of it, but there are definitely private actors who do evil stuff. And Monsanto did that. They ran trucks with seeds with their patented seeds to kill off competition by getting the seeds on the farmer's land and then calling them, I forgot exactly what agency it was, but yeah, because it's been a while. I saw that documentary a couple of years ago and researched it. Like, oh wow, pretty wild. Pretty wild.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking against, trying to say, hey, that's evil.
It is. I don't want to take.
If Google won't say don't be evil, I'll say it. Just kidding. I'd say it even if Google did. But I like their old slogan. It was "Don't be evil." I'm not sure what they meant by evil, but don't be evil. I guess.
Okay. Don't be. That was Google's old thing.
Interesting. They're like, well, we got to change that slogan. Man, these comments are lit. Some cool people over here. Someone's like, free helicopter rides. Okay, all right, that's interesting. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's violence. It's like, well, if it's free and then you get on, okay, whatever. Okay, just don't drop them. But anyway, so
what you reading?
Stream is broken. I'm reading some comments. Oh, refresh, fixed it. Oh, good. My name is Jack.
No, my name's Jamie. But Jack is the stage name.
Oh, right.
Right.
Jack, do you think there would be non-disclosure agreements?
Oh, of course. NDAs are just a contract, and non-disclosure agreement is just two people saying, okay, I agree to not do or not do something as relates to saying something or not saying something.
But that would be between those individuals, and it couldn't be applied to everyone in the whole world, which is what IP laws. And
this is actually a great example, or good food for thought. So as it is, there's always been controversy around this thing called shrink wrap licenses. So when you open up software, right? When you open a box, there's terms of conditions, right? When you open up software, it says, oh, read these terms, right? You open it up and you're like, oh, okay. So there's a question of, to what extent is there a contract form based on buying a product and reading the user agreement and stuff like that. But again, whatever that is, there's going to be market mechanisms for figuring out what is the best way for people to come to an agreement for buying products and the terms of service or terms of use. And I think that that's something that will, of course, be much more robustly addressed through the market institutions than just using the government to make one size fits all policies and then basically just like California, like literally California is like a place where contracts just don't mean anything. Literally California is like the number one place for
what really?
For class action lawsuits because they have so many activist judges in California that it's like the number one place for class action lawsuits because everybody's just like, oh, okay, if you don't like the agreement, just sue in California because they'll rewrite the contract, whatever.
That is so nuts.
Where other states are called four corner rule contract states where they just read what's in there, but
it's honoring your word. Yeah. Oh my god.
I think obviously it's complex because again, a lot of the
unless
things
you were under duress, obviously.
Right. And there's some elements of things that like with agreements
like
where there could be fraud or like someone hiding a term or trying to like, bait and switch and stuff. There's certainly problematic elements, but I think fundamentally a lot of these issues relate to systemic you could say confusion related to government violence as well as indoctrination in schools. Basically, because of public schools, most people are graduating completely dysfunctional and legally illiterate, right? Like when you graduate in a public school, by and large, most people like have no idea how law works, have no idea how contracts work. They think the government's just going to save you. Like, right. Yeah. They don't.
I mean, I didn't teach that. I wasn't taught that at all.
They force you to learn all these topics that have nothing to do with what most people are actually going to deal with.
They taught me more to when you encounter a police officer, obey his every command. He's just trying to help you. He's, like that's more the kind of things that I was taught, like how to obey authority.
Right. Yeah. And
it wasn't like how to defend yourself or never mentioning that the state could be an oppressor.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, historically too,
they only mention monarchs and dictators as potential oppressors, but they're like, oh, democratic governments are this.
Right. If you put the word democracy in front of anything, it's suddenly good.
Oh my gosh.
Democracy, democratic fascism, democratic socialism, democratic communism. Oh, it's good now. There's democratic somewhere in there.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Democratic socialism. Oh.
If you get to vote,
consented magically. Wait, what?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of people are unfortunately stunted because of the schooling process. Historically, a lot of people had scriveners and lawyers and stuff to help them read and interpret contracts, and it was a social norm. And now everybody is just like, well, the government will just save me. They don't like. I mean, even just going to like the car dealership where they give you a contract to like do an oil change, and they're just like, oh, here, just sign it really quick. And I'm like, I want to read this. Like, what is this? Like, people are just so used to just not even reading and signing because they think.
Oh, that happens everywhere.
They just think, oh, the government's going to save my butt no matter what.
Yeah, or like workers will get annoyed with you for reading the contract. Like many times we'll go to a place.
They're like, oh, this just says this. I'm like,
and you'll read the contract, but you can tell their face like, oh, why don't you just sign it like everyone else?
Just sign the contract. Like
it's not a big deal. And then you actually find something where it's like, oh, okay, you can use my picture and, I can't.
Right.
I have to sign that you can use all pictures of me for anything.
Whatever. There's been several agreements that like I looked at and I like crossed it out because sometimes they have these template boilerplate forms and they're like, we can just take a picture of you at this business.
Remember one time someone called the manager. They're like, oh, you crossed out this, one provision to say that you don't want your picture taken or be used in marketing and stuff.
Right.
And they're just like, oh, I need to call corporate. And it took like 20 minutes to get an answer. And they're like, you're fine.
Yeah, I like because I'm like, I'm gonna read the contract before actually signing. I don't care. I'm gonna read it. And if there's something I don't agree with, no, I'm gonna say nope. Just cross that out. And if you don't want it, then too bad.
It's just showing how it's such a social norm to just think the government's got you covered.
They do.
That you don't have to read contracts. And,
but people go through that system, literally think like whatever. And this is what actually connects to me. Now we're getting to other topics, but I'm accepting it. Let's do it. So let's do it.
Wait, okay, other topics. I like what someone said. Michael said, I learned more on my 1 hour bus ride to and from school than I learned in the actual school.
Yeah, not surprised because it's so nuts. Yeah. But like, what an aspect to statist indoctrination that is so thick and so crazy that I don't fully appreciate until I got older was that many people actually do genuinely believe that if it's on a store shelf, it's okay. They think, oh, the government's checked it, FDA, this or that. If the FDA has approved it, it's good. Low fat, okay, whatever. Right. They just don't, like, they have no concept of, oh, you need to read labels still. Like the government, you can't just trust the government's approval.
USDA,
right. You can't just trust what the government says is okay. It's like I wouldn't trust anything they say is okay to the first place. I'd do my own research into it as much as I could. Like, and that's a part of schools. They think, the government's here to stop market failures, right? That's why we have the EPA and the FDA and all this stuff. We need to stop market failures, and that we make sure if it's on the shelf, it's
they
okay.
Never talk about how failures get corrected in the market, in a free market. That was never covered in school, ever. You would never, ever hear in any of the public schools that I attended, and I went to all of them. I mean, not all the public schools.
I went to all the public schools.
But all the years I went to school was public school. And never once did they ever talk about any benefits of capitalism, how, the specialization of labor and individuals having their property rights respected, leading to such wealth creation. They never ever talked about it in a good way. It was just like, people are scary and people are prone to violence. That's why we got to have the state filled with those same freaking people prone to violence, give them a lot of power. And that's how we'll, protect everything.
Yeah, they'll say market failure in textbooks, but they'll never say government failure. You won't see the words government failure. Right. You'll see the words market failure, though. Yeah. You won't see government failure. You won't say, here's how the government screwed this up. Here's how the government mandated this and it was bad. Here's how the government, killed these people. You won't see that.
And it's always a compared to what, too. You will never see the comparison of like, okay, when there's a failure in the free market, what does the correction and individual response and relative freedom of everybody look like compared to people in an oppressive, tyrannical state? Like, what is the recourse for state tyranny compared to tyranny in the market of, individuals, and there's no monopoly of force. Like, it looks very different. One, you're an individual who's like, this company's providing a bad service, or they lied to me about this product. Well, I'm going to go on social media. I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to go to the news. I'm going to say, you have so much recourse as an individual, and you have so much power as an individual in the free market. Compare that to the state. If the state's like, hey, we are going to get the police to enforce, and say that marijuana is legal, and that if we catch you with this plant, we're going to throw you in prison. What is your recourse? Well, status will be like, just go vote in 4 years. Yeah. Just vote.
They'll take your money no matter what, right? At least in the business, you can say, no, I'm not going to shop there anymore.
It's
but government's like, nope. You
it's disgusting, and it's just a product of indoctrination. Yeah. That's it. Just wish I could shake every status and be like, I was there too. I went to public school too. Like, you are being led and manipulated by these tyrants.
Right.
Anyway, I said I was tired.
Michael said that there was a document that was a release for his kids to sign for public school, and he refused. He would just go with his kids. It's like, it's that's true too. Even in school things, right? They're like, just sign this thing for your kid. Just sign whatever this release, and they try to do whatever they can to get you to basically give over every single possible right you otherwise have to the state, and then try to point, see, look, you signed this, because they just hope nobody reads it, right? They just give it to you, just sign it, just sign. It's sick. It's really crazy how much, the status indoctrination has dumbed down people at large, in a way that would never be supported otherwise in the free market. Being dumbed down would not be supported. Making bad decisions, you're not. No one's going to support that. No one's going to let you keep
being demeaned. Being told that you need to ask permission to go to the freaking bathroom is, that wouldn't be incentivized in a society where, people their rights are respected. They would have a compared to what? Of freedom. And they'd be like, fuck this. I mean, think of any adult now. You put them back in public school, you think they're going to like being corralled around, have the bell ring.
That's such a good point. Like,
every adult now, they love their freedom. They're like,
if any adult got put back in that, they'd be like,
I can go to college and get whatever degree I want to. I don't want to go to college. I'm just going to start my own business, whatever they want, Like, they would hate going back to public school and being told what to do. It's prison. It literally is prison.
Right.
I see my siblings, my cousins, friends, kids going to public school. I just feel so sad for them. I just see, every single one of them, especially the ones I knew as kids, they go from these kids who are like just so creative and they're like so full of life. And then they go to school and they're just like really sad. Like, there was, you're forced to be with these other kids. And a lot of these kids are dysfunctional too, from broken homes. You maybe get bullied and you're just sad. or the teacher's like comparing you to other kids and saying like, oh, you got an A+, good for you. Or it's like, oh, you're failing. It's like, what's wrong? Or like, put that book away. It's just so demeaning. You don't have any freedom.
It's pretty nuts.
It's the Prussian school model. It's a model of schooling in order to create soldiers to obey the state and die for the state and be collectivists and just be sheep. I mean, that is literally the system that is the American public school education system.
Right.
That's where it's from. It's like, why is this still here? This is nuts. Why are people forced to fund this? This is disgusting.
Well, it's specifically, I mean, the reason why is because when the Federal Reserve was created, it was meant, and the 16th Amendment was created, the income tax, it was meant to slowly erode people's wealth to the point that you'd have to have two income earners in order to survive. You have to have both mother and father working. And once that happens, well, I guess we got to send our kids somewhere to babysit because we can't afford to live without two people working.
So to you, it's like, ooh, free daycare.
Yeah, free daycare that came at your expense in the first place. That was, never meant to be. So yeah, I mean, it's very concrete what those policies were intended to do, which is to destroy families and to make it so that it's very difficult for families to take care of kids in the first place. And be like, oh, I can't afford it. Well, just hand them to the state so they can be indoctrinated for 12 years.
And literally owned by the state. Yeah. And the state is literally saying, by requiring that parents, send their kids to public school by default.
Right.
And ask for permission if they don't want to, which is nuts. They're literally saying they own your kids. Your kids are not yours in what the state is saying. It's the state's.
Well, parens patriae doctrine is the specific legal doctrine under which, that goes. So you can look that up. Parens, P-A-R-E-N-S, patriae,
so glad I have a lawyer here.
Lawyer. Yeah. I know. I don't normally flex my legal stuff, but
it's helpful. It's like self-defense. Somebody asked earlier, what are your tools for self-defense? Well, that's one.
Tools for self-defense around here.
Legal. Understanding the law.
Got a lot of tools.
The laws. Well, wouldn't you say that's a part of self-defense, understanding the current laws?
Yeah, the logical self-defense is a little different than the other physical self-defense. I got a lot on the physical. But yeah.
Not anymore. After that boating trip.
Yeah, that boating trip, we lost all them guns. It's
who started that joke? I owe them $1.
Yeah, because I made this joke.
Who made
and you
that
owe
meme?
me 50 cents.
By the way, guys, when I watermark my memes, that means anyone who shares it owes me like $5, especially if you
immediate
get like
$1 million. You share this meme that's watermarked. It is $1 million.
Yeah.
The states, yeah. The state will enforce that. So Christopher said, but it takes a village. Yeah.
Oh no! Oh, cringe.
It's just silly. Yeah.
I remember I've said that to you like in a different meaning than what Hillary Clinton meant, and it made you cringe so much.
It takes a lot of individuals acting their, self-interest to.
Where does a man find a bottle of sake like that? At the capitalist grocery store, my friend.
Yeah.
Didn't you probably go to Walmart?
I don't know. You can
No, it didn't have it at Walmart. You need to go to like a actual like liquor.
Liquor star.
It is Eastern time. It's 1 a.m. over here.
Yeah.
Why hasn't anyone made a meme of me yet? Actually,
people have made tons of memes of you.
Please make.
But you may not like what it says.
Oh, I've seen commie memes.
Commie memes.
Just that one meme. It was like privatization, Ray. It's really funny.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny. That was pretty funny.
It was funny.
That's the closest to a funny one that commies have made. Commies don't make too many funny memes.
They're out there burning your cars, tipping over garbage cans, breaking your windows.
Even before this, some like commie I think was like telling me.
Oh, Zach Lukowski said I made. Oh, here's Zach. I made memes.
Zach Lukowski comes on and what is this? So basically, someone was commenting on the voluntary shell just a moment ago, saying,
Florida
man.
I love Florida man.
Capitalism must be ended. Because it's just not right. And I'm like,
wait, Christopher, are you flow grown?
Flow grown.
You flow grown?
Flow grown. Oh my God.
Flow grown? Anyway, sorry.
Anyway. So, yeah, like, it's hilarious how a lot of people use these abstractions to talk about the world, right? Like, whether it's communist, and talking about hierarchy or talking about primitive accumulation, like very few people in those realms actually take the time to philosophically walk all the way back to the beginning of, okay, what is the nature of existence? What is the nature of being a person? What's the nature of your body? How do you want to be treated? Like once you get to that point, everything changes. But very few people are there. They often start at the end point because that's what school does. School talks about the end, the utilitarianism, the outcome. They don't get you thinking about, okay, well, wait a second. What's the nature of the human action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Macy's did that, though. Macy's did that quite a bit.
They definitely didn't. It was just teaching you to love your country from kindergarten, and onwards.
Peace out, free helicopter ride guy.
Oh. Wow, what a nice guy. He's giving free helicopter rides
for socialists of Roblox.
Oh, Roblox, though?
Of Roblox? Really I think Roblox is itself an offense. Okay. I'm just kidding.
That's hilarious. Have a good night. That was fun. Thanks for hanging.
That was really funny.
Somebody said English is messed up language anyway. I think referring to us talking about public school. He said, I grew up speaking it. However, the more I dig into it, I realize English is built for confusion. I mean, what do you mean? Like, maybe was it the way you learned English, perhaps? Like the methodology?
The language can be confusion. The phonics of like, oh, there's a lot of words that like they're spelled similarly, but they're said differently. So understandable. But that happens a lot.
Personally,
a lot of
languages. Love English. I don't know.
It's very convenient. It's a word. It's a global language for a reason because it's very easy to understand, even if you have poor accents.
I learned it through. I love phonics. Like how to read English. Read English.
I thought you learned it underneath the dictator in Vietnam.
No. Okay. You're bringing back memories.
Flashbacks to Nam.
Luckily, I didn't.
Yeah.
I just grew up in a different prison. It was more covert, the tyranny. But public school. So, but yeah, I learned English, like just sounding out the words. I really enjoyed reading. But like nowadays, there's more. We were talking about the other day. Didn't you say like there are kids with more reading problems or like dyslexia because the way they're taught to read, it wasn't the phonics method of sounding.
Well, this actually is funny that you mentioned this because
pictures.
Herv3 said, "Oh my butt, I can't feel it anymore." Okay, Herv3 said, "Sadly, public schools don't teach phonics," and that's exactly right. Public schools, by and large, in the 90s, there was this movement that was basically called sight reading and inventive spelling. So what happened is
I missed that wave.
I guess you did because you can read. But basically what happened is young kids in the elementary arena were being taught to read words based on just sight. In other words, like using like pictorial, like Chinese or something. And then they had inventive spelling where they didn't really require students to spell words properly. They just,
it's like
let
you
them
should
do whatever.
Learn how to look at the root words of things. That helps you derive.
And again, I'm not saying this should be forced again, because I think phonics actually is natural. Again, if you just are allowed to interact with the culture for kids, they will learn to read phonetically by talking to people and reading, and sound, and engage with the culture. But in school, they were forcing them to do it this method, and then basically they were becoming dyslexic because they couldn't actually read the words phonetically. They could only sight read it, so they had limited vocabularies. And the evidence of the outcomes of that has been noted in many instances of lowered intelligence at large because of reading IQ, and even the SAT dropped down the word count because students couldn't do well in the SAT anymore because of their word abilities. So they dropped down to like 800 keywords.
So trying to just teach English, which is not supposed to be taught that way, as if it's like a hieroglyphic language like Chinese.
Right. Yeah. English is a phonetic language. Learning how to sound out the letters helps you break down future words and stuff like that.
Those are just symbols, but it's like
right. Yeah. So it's there's been a major increase of created dyslexia essentially, which is kind of sick when you think about it.
And it's all funded for by future debt of your children and taxes extorted from you now. It's just so angering. It's like there's not a day that goes by since I started realizing like the nature of government that I don't feel angry that I'm extorted every day. Like, I just want to scream. Like, I wish I could just end it, tyranny. I just wish I could. I'm not. Wait.
The Boogaloo.
The Boogaloo. Oh, yeah, I mentioned the Boogaloo earlier.
Goodness.
I was like, anyone mentioned that? And someone's like, yeah, it's a dance move.
It's a dance move. Electric Boogaloo.
I was like, oh,
it's coming sooner than later. I don't know if things keep going this way. It's good. I mean, the U.S. is throttling toward the historic forms of socialism, which we're not talking about people just choosing to work in worker-owned cooperatives. We're talking about state socialism.
Talking about state.
Yeah, not that I like that either. In terms of I wouldn't choose that arrangement, but
but if it's voluntary, okay, and based on property rights, or whatever.
But it's it's heading that way. It's going to be scary. It's I don't know. I mean, it's some of these states though. Some of these states have passed the point where you think there should have already been an uprising in New York, New Jersey, California.
Oh my gosh, New York's going nuts.
Massachusetts, you'd think that there would be an uprising, but I think that maybe many of those gun owners just fled. I think maybe they just left the state, went to Texas or Florida or Kentucky.
Like in New York.
Yeah, or Ohio, maybe. Ohio's still holding on. They have a big areas.
Heavy restrictions on gun rights,
Yeah, and Washington and their bill is crazy, Washington's bill was crazy.
Full-term abortions. Mandatory vaccination.
Gun vaccination,
so extreme. Abortions. What violations on your property? I mean, if I was in New York, I'd get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, no, New York's literally at that point of like, okay, y'all, this is like
it's almost worse in California because like in New York, it's so like
California's coming pretty close. It's getting close, but no, New York is worse. New York is probably worse.
Just because everyone's so concentrated, so like this,
Well, I mean, there's a big difference between upstate New York and the city, but in terms of legal, overall environment, and taxes, New York is definitely, I would say, probably at this point above the dangers of California.
Yeah, and with the mandatory vaccination, there were a lot of
that was crazy. That's like I don't know.
That there were a lot of Jews. Hey, I'm against mandatory vaccination, and what was it? It was over.
It was all the Hasidic Jews and the Orthodox Jews were really pissed about the mandatory vaccination because they wanted to have exemptions, of course. And I don't know. That's crazy. It's like what's it gonna lead to? No, they didn't. That's what they were cussing out all those congressmen and women. They were like,
right.
So I mean, it's pretty nuts that it's come to that, but I think the polarization is great.
Guns, like a Jewish
I don't think so. I don't. Well, they could maybe deep Jew, but maybe not. Yeah, deep Jew. But basically, I mean, it's just totally shocking because it's like at that point, like, what do you do? Because that's do or die. You got to get out of there because
they're literally trying to inject.
I don't see how anybody who loves liberty, would be staying in New York or New Jersey. And I mean, California is basically almost done at this point.
Yeah,
I don't. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I love the weather." It's like, what's left?
I've never been to Cali, but isn't Cali a huge state? And there's like
it's the most populated state,
right? But isn't there like very diverse terrain? And there's some places where it's like just desert and not that many people.
Well, yeah, because there's the area near Route 60 and stuff. There's a lot of people. California definitely could be split along those lines of more status, less status. But again, the general legal climate is very not favorable. I mean, but I think that in some sense, though, assuming that the people who actually value liberty leave those states and go to other states where liberty is more valued, that's a great thing. The only thing that's going to be worried.
Florida, Arizona,
Texas, Ohio, still a little bit. Although, you want to be tax-free, so Texas, Florida, New Hampshire.
What about Idaho?
Idaho? I don't know.
Oh,
Idaho. But I don't know.
Are we going to get, like...
I just know on the generalities
demonetized?
No hoes are being demonetized. But it just really is hitting that point where it's like, in these states, you would expect there to be a violent uprising already. But I think maybe
Kentucky has amazing gun laws.
Kentucky does. Mm-hmm. If it's being staved off, my 2 cents is that it's because the people who value liberty are just leaving. New York, California, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and stuff like that. Illinois.
I want libertarians to concentrate.
Right, they're making an exodus. I'm pretty sure the people
prepare for the Boogaloo.
Yeah. It's there's just scary, no way around
it. But like America is like the last stand.
Effectively, at this point, the people in America have the last stand. Even though it's so tyrannical
still in many areas of life, and trade, still compared to other countries, like wow.
It is
At least
scary.
There's a semblance of gun rights over here in certain states. Like, oh my gosh!
And in other places, Switzerland passed more gun control stuff too.
I just think that's crazy. How can we be the last ones in this giant world with billions of people? Like,
it is coming. Like those predictions of those like dystopian novelists is coming to a head.
Tyranny.
And it is kind of concerning because it's like part of me just like wants to like leave that to fiction and think, oh yeah, that's just a possible future. It's not me.
It's not gonna happen.
But I'm like, crap. Like this really is gonna fall on me in my lifetime. Like,
it's up to every single one of us now. Like,
I was hoping to pass it on. Be like, I don't have to be the one who has to face the risks. I can just live a life and enjoy it. But part of me is like, wow, this really, if I don't do something in my lifetime, it may be the last bit of liberty before a tyranny that is unprecedented in all of human history, because the technological apparatus with which to enslave people is beyond measure.
That's why you made the comic, because you're really just trying to show the story of
it's supposed to be predictive. It's prophetic in a sense, in the sense that it's like, I do understand what is coming, but it's just, it felt more fictional and real. And it's like, wow, that the technocracy is very real now. And when you look at other countries around the world where this is happening, especially because the European Union and China and the social credit system, and you're like, that's real. Like, that's not just like some science fiction. Oh, that's a fun movie to watch. And it's like, okay, whatever. No, it's like, holy crap, this is about to be implemented in the US. Like, this is not a joke. Like, this is like, you actually have to pick up guns. Like, this is, 1776 stuff. This is not like, maybe down the road. This is like, dude, if I don't change enough minds, like, we're literally going to get murdered, like mass murdered, like rounded up in camps like they have in China for their re-education centers. Millions of people have literally been rounded up in camps and put into re-education centers for extremist thoughts. And it's like, whoa.
In China, you're talking?
Yeah, in China. And it's like, this is what's coming to European Union.
I saw a video of
and here.
Yeah, I saw a video of a Chinese woman. Could have been me,
No, and that's Chinese woman, scary.
The police broke down her door and they just took her to whatever camp or whatever, just because of something she said online.
And remember,
she's like, "What? I'm eating. I'm in my sleeping clothes. She's ready to sleep. It's dark. It was just sad. I just feel
that guy in Vietnam who was arrested for a Facebook post that was anti-state. It wasn't like anarchist even. It was just criticizing the state. And it's like, wait, this is really happening. Like, people are really getting put in jail. In New Zealand, the guy who shared the video of the shooting, right? Again, it's a horrific thing. It was evil, but it's a video of that. Okay, so it's just information. They put him in jail for years. And you're putting people in jail for just speech. And you have that in the UK for hate crimes and also there's stuff. And you're like, this is really coming to a head. Like, this is going to be a 1776 thing. You know what I mean? Not hyperbolic, not like, I'm joking with my friends kind of thing, but it's only a matter of time before that's a real deal. And you have to choose. Are you going to stand for liberty? Or are you going to just let yourself be killed off and everybody else round up and mass murdered so that those in power can forever indoctrinate and control everything because it's there? It's scary.
We were talking about the Boogaloo. It makes me think of Minutemen.
Yeah.
During the American Revolution, like, just regular,
I don't want it.
Regular fathers, brothers, people, women, mothers, sisters who just picked up guns and they're like, okay, we're going to fend off these people trying to rule over us.
I don't want it one bit. I want just peace.
Yeah, I want peace.
And prosperity and people be free and just respected.
That's why we're trying to change minds. That's why our focus is trying to change minds.
That's scary. That's crazy stuff, but that's real. It's going to come if enough minds are not changed in time. That's a very real question of what are you going to do when that comes? Because it's not a matter of, just like theoretical. It's like they are really going to mass murder people like us. They are going to round people like us up and kill us. Like not just like theoretically, like real. Like, this is not a joke. Like, I mean, just remember the Bitcoin crypto couple who like put a little like thing, an island off of Thailand.
Yeah, they legit did the thing that status say to do. They moved to another country.
Right, like, move to Somalia. Like, they moved to the middle of the ocean and they attack. And it's just like, this is the question. And that's why I made the comic too. That's what it revolves around, is it's like, this is the humanity's last stand against, and I say government, but I really think of this more of like a permanent enslavement where the government will dictate who is allowed to live or die, what thoughts are allowed to be had, and in a way that is of the wild science fiction you can imagine in terms of control, because the technology is there, the apparatus is there, like Facebook and stuff like that. We're on this, we're having fun on YouTube, stuff like that, but there is a machine learning program meant to be used eventually, because the machine learning through all the posts and the tagging, stuff like that, to back end implement the social credit system apparatus. The US government can't do it directly like the Chinese government can, but they can backdoor it. The US government can backdoor it through using Facebook's technology, YouTube's technology.
So overtly,
right? They're not going to do it overtly. They're going to do it back end and use that technology, leverage it for the purpose of implementing a pseudo social credit system. And you've seen that with the censorship as it is. That's already what's happening. Is that kind of social credit system precursor. And the government's going to leverage that technology on the back end because they can't do it directly. The government can't legally do it themselves because that would violate the shreds of Fourth Amendment that are left. But they can try to back end by buying it. So it's very scary. And, I don't want it. I don't want it one bit. I don't want to have, a violent revolution thing, because it's something that
someone said, what was
scary
that about buying?
And terrible and awful and horrible. But it's gonna,
what do you
at this
do
rate,
to
it's
find
gonna
the
come.
Story? Someone said, what would they type in to find the story of the couple? Like, I don't know, Thailand.
Yeah, just crypto couple, like seasteading. Yeah, and that guy was himself. He was a libertarian, voluntarist guy. He made money in the crypto market and just wanted him and his wife to live out in the sea, 12 miles out
in a humble abode.
Like, a little thing, 12 miles out.
Even if it was extravagant, who cares? It was like literally 12 miles out and technically in international waters.
Yeah,
but. They like threatened him with the death penalty.
They're like, we're going to kill you. And there's some people who try to rationalize it, saying, oh, well, because the Chinese government is trying to establish routes and steads to do more, which is true. The Chinese government is attempting to increase power, just like all governments are. Right. And so they're trying to be like, well, we got to assert our sovereignty. But it's like
governments.
This was, it wasn't even a government they were asserting against. They're just killing or attempting to kill innocent people who were doing nothing more than just trying to live free.
Yeah.
Hurting nobody, just out 12 nautical miles from shore. Yeah. So, this is very terrifying. And, these governments are not even, they're not even like permitting escape off planet, right? Like NASA denied SpaceX missions, right? So, because Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, right? So, it was like, okay, well, let people be free and try to even escape the planet and all these governments. And the government will stop emissions to get out of the planet. We're literally living in like the most insane time where we have space age technology and Stone Age philosophy.
It's really time to just make connections, have friends and family around you that you can rely on, change their minds, get them into self-defense,
Yeah. You got to change. It's just to say, that's how I view it, is you got to change as many minds as possible because it's going to come to a head, and there will be that moment. There's going to be a defining moment, just like there was, many years ago with the British and the colonists. And it's going to hit that point where you're going to have to choose, and you're going to have to say, do I allow the next generation or your children to be enslaved forever, potentially? Or do you say, no, I'm not going to accept slavery. I'm not going to accept mass indoctrination, theft, and murder, and destruction of the human spirit.
There are a lot of people working to create technology to help fight, against this mass censorship and, wave of trying to do the social credit system and social engineering. There are people trying to create alternatives for social media and communication, cryptocurrencies, trying to, not all cryptos, of course, but some trying to make it easier to trade and not have to ask permission to trade and to not be extorted, not have your money extorted from you. So those are one of the ways to fight back. Definitely just trying to create alternatives for people to trade. I think that's a huge part of it. The new infrastructure, a new decentralized infrastructure.
Yeah, but even then, that's getting shut down because the governments of the world are coordinating to try to, whether
who
it
has
was
the
Silk
guns,
Road
who
or
has the
whatever.
bombs, who has the nukes, like who has the
there are some
tens of
crypto
thousands of
solutions that are
troops.
helping to foster the information and spread, but it is very tough, and the legal landscape is coming to a very scary close. Someone mentioned too, they're trying to do backdoor gun grabs of red flag laws. Yes, exactly. When the red flag laws, again, they're one of those things where it's like, it sounds so good, right? We're just trying to prevent someone from murdering someone, right? We're just going to take guns. But when you look at the nature of what it is literally the violation of someone's property rights, their fundamental rights to their property, their home, their privacy, without them actually having been accused even of committing harm against another. There is no accusation of this person actually concretely violated the body or property rights of another. Because if they did, then you just arrest them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, if they actually did that, if they actually battered somebody or stole from somebody or like killed somebody, you'd have a crime.
Yeah, that's
you don't need a red flag law. If they actually hurt somebody in a physically material way that's worthy of being, grabbed and being stopped because they actually attacked somebody, you have a crime that has a victim. But no. Yeah, it's a huge manipulation, and then people don't realize that it is a backdoor gun grab.
Someone said living in space age technology with Stone Age philosophy. Somebody's reading.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, we are living in a world of space age technology and Stone Age philosophy, and that is specifically because the government has, through the use of public schools, made people who are competent enough to follow orders, learn and apply basic scientific facts in terms of material science and things like that. But they've been intellectually stunted on philosophical ethics. They've intentionally dumbed down people in one field while made them exalted in another. And that's why you have so many people today that you say, why is there all this push for socialism and government control among educated people? It's because the government has fostered a generation of people who are thinking they're very intelligent for having followed and rightfully in some ways applied material science knowledge, but they are completely Dunning-Kruger effect ignorant on ethical philosophy because they've been told, oh, well, it's just, if the government says it's good, it's good. You know what I mean? It's okay. Whatever the government does is just okay. Accept that part. But here, learn about math, learn about chemistry and stuff. Yeah. But just accept that whatever the government says is true is true. So you have this crazy like left-right brain divide of like one part being really high in the general culture sense and the other part being really low. And it's a bizarro world to live in, this world where it's like, wow, there's all this wild technology on space travel and electric cars and cell phones and all this stuff. But the philosophy is what you would expect of a caveman.
Yeah, and it keeps regressing.
In terms of, if you talk to someone, you can have very brilliant minds in science, physics or astronomy or nuclear physics, or chemistry, and you talk to them about the other stuff, and it sounds like as if you're talking to a 5-year-old, because they've never engaged it. So, good luck on your bathroom trip. Well, I guess it's just me for now. Until she comes back from her bathroom break. All right, so that means I'm going to read comments here. I need jungle tunnels. So let's see. Someone said, is that Adam Fitch? Yeah, there are making it impossible to have garage sales because of a law supposedly meant to keep kids from being poisoned by lead paint. Yeah, I mean, that's a great example, right? This idea of, oh, it's for the kids. No garage sales. You might sell some kid some Chinese product that has lead in it. Just no garage. I mean, people are not thinking about the inception of how that happens of the garage sale ban. Wait, this is my home. This is my private property that I'm selling. The government should have no business in between that transaction. You know what I mean? It's up to people to educate themselves on whether something is, good or bad or what they, want with it. The government may not be saying what you should or shouldn't do with your personal property, again, assuming you're not physically violating the body or property of another. So yes, absolutely. It's pretty wild. Someone said, yeah, Bitcoin is control. Don't fall for the scam. That's an interesting thought, Bitcoin, because again, the number of people who actually have the nodes and so forth, and who can create the rules and the updates, can be slowly aggregated for control. I think Bitcoin still is a great thing in terms of inspiring people to think outside the state in terms of money and technology, but there is a risk there, of course, with centralization of nodes and the people who are actually voting on the rules. So it is something to be aware of, but you know.
Hello, yes. What did I miss? Okay.
Just garage sales and
I like
Bitcoin.
How we switched from intellectual property to like.
Yeah, we decided to keep
I think we always mentioned that. Just like literally just the threat that is always looming over our heads every day, you know. Trying to make
we just gotta be real about it. It's scary. I mean, I really
think about what we can do.
It's something that is a very real fear of mine that I don't want. I really don't want. I want there to be peace. I just want people to change their minds, like, oh yeah, you know, let's try to work toward voluntary interactions. Yeah, no more. Let's not do this war thing. Let's just respect people's body and property. Let's try to, you know, resolve things based on contracts and agreement. But it's wild. The people in power really do want to do what the Georgia Guidestones say, you know, which is, you know,
get rid of
kill off most of the human population. No, more than that, because the Georgia Guidestones say 500 million people, and then you know those in power really do want to kill off most of the world's population because they see them as superfluous.
And who do they want to kill off?
The
anarchists, the libertarians.
Oh, that's true too. They want to kill off those people.
Anyone with any semblance of wanting to have freedom.
It's sick because they're anti-human. Radical, like, you know, in terms of how they speak, it's radical environmentalism. In reality, it's just radical anti-humanism.
Yeah. It is, right?
Yeah, it's just radical anti-humanism is what it boils down to. Anyone who's a climate alarmist or who is like a Malthusian or someone who's like, oh, people are just overpopulating. It's just absolute anti-human psychology, anti-freedom, anti-market, and it's absolutely disgusting because it's just devaluing people's lives. Based on their desire to control and murder off anyone they don't like.
Yeah.
Which is sick.
They just deem them as worthless.
Yeah.
Like they don't care. I'll just kill them off. Just send them off to war.
And that's the crazy part is that we're not in a world that's like so scarce as to like mean that people are just going to die off and stuff like that. Because again, with technological innovation, as you know, Thomas Malthus has proved wrong heartily. People can be provided for with the growth of shared knowledge and the respect of property rights. Because again, once you have that, well, people come up with ways to produce more. They work together to produce more food and produce more shelter. So it's very anti-human.
Yeah.
Sex. All politicians are the enemy. I agree. I definitely agree there.
And I always tell people our favorite consensual society because then it makes them feel like a rapist. Somewhat.
Chan brought a Pusheen.
Oh, Pusheen.
But yeah, I think, you know, if you're watching this, as always, you're here. Exactly. You're part of the last. You're part of the last resistance that may exist.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. You're it. If you're watching this, you're probably a part of the last generation of humans that will choose whether humanity goes into a dystopian future like all the dystopian novels predict, or whether there's a renaissance for liberty and people say, no, screw this. We're going to promote property rights. We're going to promote individual freedom. We're not going to accept a technocratic elite.
I think there would always be a flame for liberty, just like something that people tend to naturally push towards, just wanting freedom and there would be revolutions, but it to the point where the technological power and just physical power possible by these state governments now is getting so great that if it's not stopped, like any continual like revolutions that would happen or like people trying to like advocate for liberty would be squashed even more quickly than
there's a very narrow thread right now that's preventing that from actually happening.
Total control
and
of
a part
everything.
right, and a part
it's
of that is
that point yet,
people being armed. One part is that the fact that people are armed, and people always like try to downplay it, like, oh no, like whatever, you could just be killed by the U.S. military. No, guess what? No. There's enough military people who at least understand, individual liberty matters to a degree, and they wouldn't let that happen. There's enough people who are armed who wouldn't let that happen. So they can't do that direct violence quite yet, but it is coming. Yeah. It's coming to where the government's in power.
You gotta hack away at people's livelihoods first. Like, get them weak in them first, and that's how you can swoop in.
I mean, there's already been a couple states where the experiment has happened, and they've tested the waters and have found, oh, you know what? They will comply. And the ones who don't want to will move out of the state, whatever, and they'll start there. And it's just how it's been going.
Ugh, evil.
Yeah.
So evil. That was what the Democratic debate. I didn't watch it, but the snippets that I saw was just like nasty sociopathic people. Even Tulsi, who focuses on being anti-war. I give her that. That's great. But she totally always papers over any questions, or just even on her page. If you look at her page, she doesn't say directly what policies she advocates for. She's very careful to not say government ought to, regulate, energy or whatever, or, the government should do something about the quote, the wage gap that she thinks exists. She tries not to touch it, but everyone on the stage, even her, who was probably the one who most resembled some semblance of virtue on stage. Everyone there was so sociopathic, scripted. They just want power. And,
that's pretty nuts. All right. This all just reminded me, all these talks about the nature of the state and coming dystopia. Well, again, I don't want it to happen. It's coming on the horizon, but we're trying our best to change minds. And on that note, there is a couple of projects about changing minds that we do want to quickly just recommend here.
I totally forgot about this.
I forgot about this too. So Stateless Productions, they're putting together a film about liberty. And I think it's going to be pretty good because they're going to have a lot of great people. So we're just going to share it here really quick on both the YouTube and the Facebook. So basically, they're producing a documentary on the nature of liberty with the hopes of getting it out there so that people can learn about it. So we're going to share that here for both YouTube and Facebook. It's something to consider supporting. We definitely support it. And
that reminds me of students being indoctrinated and disarmed.
Where?
Intentionally.
Oh, of course. In public school, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just teaching them, no, the state will protect you. Yeah. Don't defend yourself. Don't bring guns here.
It's crazy.
Nuts. Get these drugs.
Yeah. How you like guns? Insane. How dare you? You must be a sociopath because you enjoy guns, even though it's fun to shoot.
There are kids in public school who are pro guns.
Right.
They're just so.
And they're told that there's something wrong with them. That you should be hated because you like guns. Guns are only used to murder people instead of guns can be used just for fun and sport. People like to play soccer or football.
I saw this story of this girl who went to college and she was raised around guns, so she was totally fine with guns, and she concealed carry for self-defense. But at this college, they didn't allow guns, so she got raped in college.
Yeah, I read that story too. Yeah, it was someone who
interview of her, and she was talking about it.
She didn't carry because she wasn't allowed to carry, and then she got raped.
It's so sad. And what is her recourse? Where was the state? Where was the school? The police? Nobody helped her. And it's just she only had herself in that moment. And if she had her gun, things could have been different.
Yeah. So on that note of just changing my Stateless Productions, we put a link there just to check their Indigo campaign because
someone it's pretty cool. Something Michael said, I really appreciate you all putting this out. Never get discouraged. I really respect you. We don't have a lot of outlet for this information for free mindset. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, what choice do I have in that? It's just I can either choose to, especially learning the nature of the state. Oh my gosh. And the nature of liberty and freedom and everything I know. Oh my gosh. My choices are to close my eyes and just dissociate, because that's what I would have to do. I can't change that I have this knowledge. I'd have to just dissociate and just pretend that everything's peachy, or I can try to do something about it. And that's what I'm going to choose to do. I don't want to dissociate.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to try to change it before it's too late.
Because this is the only life that I know that, to my knowledge, that I have. I don't know if we all get reincarnated. I don't know if I incarnated. I don't know if I go to heaven and I see my grandma. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I just got to make the most of it. And yeah.
Brian Wynn says, thanks for talking about these pressing subjects. Yes, they're very pressing, because it is very also depressing to think, that we're on this precipice of tyranny versus liberty in a way that is just, a lot of people have talked about it in history. A lot of people have said, oh, one day, the New World Order and all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, that's real and stuff like that. But like, it's really real right now. Like, in the past, in the 80s and 70s, stuff like that. Yes, they were developing that thing. But the actual apparatus was not developed then, like in terms of like meaningfully being able to implement a new world order or global government, top-down technocracy. That can actually exist now. Like this, we're not, like before it was like, now it's like, oh no, that can actually be done, in terms of actually monitoring everybody, and has already been, beta tested and rolled out in China. So, it is a do or die time, to spread that message of liberty before that's it. That's, it'll be the last gasps of liberty. If we don't work together to try to change as many minds as possible and fight back. So.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Definitely. Well, community is very important. And so thanks for being part of our community.
Yeah.
I know we're all spread out all over the place, so boogaloo might be hard.
Yeah. Christopher said, behold the pale horse. Right. Yeah. Behold the pale horse. There's several books that talk about it, that talk about the different institutions and organizations that are orchestrating that, type of, saying one world government or something like that is, it is a truth, but it's more just the nature of what's actually being done beyond even just the concept of one world government. It's this idea of controlling all people from cradle to grave by some type of small group of human beings and violence. That is really what the issue is.
No more families.
Is that, those in power just want to choose
humans are just
who gets to be born, who gets to say what. Right.
It's like the Matrix, like those robots just harvesting humans. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like,
distracted.
Is Elon Musk right on the simulation part, or maybe we're already been in it, and they're like basically like,
can't prove or disprove
right. Of course, we can't prove or disprove, but it's just kind of funny to like think about it. It's like, oh my goodness, like, are we just being groomed for this already, or but it's true. I mean, here we are.
Look at Black Mirror. A lot of people speculate that that's just predictive programming.
It could be
just showing that, hey, just get used to this kind of world of control, statism, and
don't think too deeply about philosophy. Just think about producing values so the government can take most of it.
They still don't have advanced philosophy. It's still regressive. It reflects the current, society's mainstream culture. And like lack of philosophy. Like Black Mirror is just trying to show like, oh, here's some crazy technology that's possible that may be coming up soon. Like,
I think Black Mirror actually did a great job of demonstrating what the future holds from what I know about technology but
there was still governments. There were still
and
governments.
The language level that they use within the character tropes of Black Mirror is so shockingly bad and low intelligence that it should be embarrassing. Like it should be like, how the heck do people of this intelligence, in terms of how they talk to each other and treat each other, like use this level of technology of like virtual reality?
Rich. It's just they have like a lot of like super rich characters,
super rich characters that are like, and you're like, way too stupid. The way
they have the conversation is just so poor. Like they don't know how to share their feelings. They're like short-sighted, short-term oriented.
And there certainly are plenty of dysfunctional people who are very wealthy, but I mean, the trope in TV is to make it seem like as if anyone who has wealth just inherited it or is stupid and doesn't deserve it. Instead of being like, in many instances, people who, work their way up and provide value do so because of their intelligence. Like, it's not just like, oh, magic, you just get rich. Like, you had to bust your butt. Like, even Jeff Bezos, a lot of people rag on him, right? And there's definitely things with Amazon's technology and stuff that I don't necessarily personally like, but his intelligence in applying his work ethic and starting from the ground up, even though he got 300,000, I think, from his parents, but he took that from the ground up and busted his butt to create what Amazon was. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is not something that is just magically happens. Like, it took hard work. You know what I mean? It took hard freaking work, intelligent work to get to that point. And people just don't realize that. They don't.
Oh, and willpower, just sheer willpower, dedication, and commitment. Just sticking with it, even though it's like rough and you're like not even making much money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Boogaloo. What a word.
Yeah, what a word.
On my
there goes
shirt,
the analytics.
I think of Julian. What if that's a flag?
Boogaloo. I know, right? And it's near enough to, like, if you say the word boogaloo.
Boogaloo. We have to say it with the R then.
You gotta say boogaloo, and they can't get it.
Can't. We're gonna do a boogaloo.
Their analytics cannot get it.
Yeah. I wish there was just some force of liberty. Like, I wish the voluntary superheroes were real and they could really actually save Julian Assange.
At this point, that might be what it takes, right? It might be just taking some people who are true voluntarists and I don't know, maybe they make super suits or something to battle the state. I have no idea. Just some type of psychological revolution. Because if it doesn't happen in the near future, we're talking within 5 years, we're talking about an America that will slump.
Worlds.
Well, I mean, the world's already there, and by and large, if you look at the actual actions of what's happening to people around the world, but we're talking about an America that will sink the rest of the world. Brazil has had some awakening, at least liberty, in terms of the government and people there. They've been we're rejecting socialism.
Oh, there are some people from someone's Hong Kong clown world.
It is a clown world. It is a clown world.
That was the Democratic debate. I'm this is just clown world.
Yeah.
It's why would I spend?
I'm not an alt-righter by any measure, of course, because I'm voluntarist, but I do empathize with the concept that we are truly in a clown world of the concept of moral and ethical insanity, right?
Yeah.
This communistic thinking, this Marxist thinking,
violence, and
yeah. All right.
Well, great.
Great.
Zach wants to run experiments on some of our people. Whose people?
Right. Yeah. We're gonna turn all the voluntarists into people like Captain America. They're gonna get the serum. You know what I mean? And yeah. We'll see. All right. Well, I think we should wrap it up then, because I think we've covered all our bases and we way deviated off intellectual property. But hopefully we covered
the first hour was
some of those
IP.
concepts enough.
The first hour and a half was IP, or no, first hour and 20 was IP, and the last 40 minutes was. Oh no, not 40. Last hour.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for hanging. Cheers.
Y'all are awesome.
Yes. Thank you for hanging and chilling out.
Yeah. Hopefully the Boogaloo's not soon, but if it does happen, it'll be with the U.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to make a rhyme. Okay.
I don't know. I hope it doesn't. I really don't. I don't want that to happen. But
it's crazy, but that's been the nature
the government
of the
comes
world.
and attacks.
This is the nature of humanity. We've been passed down. We are the next generation of people who are carrying the torch of liberty forward. But, we have inherited a history of war. And in a lot of respects, this has been one of the most peaceful, prosperous times in history for humanity. But at the same time, very eerie and violent. There's still a lot of violence as well. There's just pockets. It just depends on which individuals you're looking at.
Yeah.
We just got to keep moving it forward. We got to seize this chance while the internet's still free here.
Yeah, relatively. I mean, thanks to Article 17 and a couple of things.
Just got to keep pushing forward. Look for alternatives. Brave. Looking to decentralize, social media networks. Got on BitChute finally. That's cool. They actually can let me upload videos, so that was nice. Thanks, BitChute. And Minds, Steam it. Build your own thing. I don't know. Create propaganda things, short animations. Freedom Tube had a really good one that I saw the other day. Thanks.
Yeah, free and tunes, good.
And yeah.
Shameless.
Anyway.
Right. So take care, Facebook. We'll see you later.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye, YouTube. It's been fun. And